Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Weekly Spinner Rack. I'll be your host, Chris, and this is a show where we talk about the latest comic book news as well as handle the latest comic book reviews. And sometimes there's interviews, but tonight instead, there's just so much news that poured out of San Diego Comic-Con. It's pretty much the place you are going to get the most comic book news for any single week out of the year. A couple other conventions give us lots of comic book news, but San Diego Comic-Con, lots to talk about tonight. Plus, I thought I would do at least one more, probably the last. I've laid out a Fast and Furious chick tract to ink tonight at the end of the show, but the order of events will be a little bit of business between me and the live audience, just talking about what's new for just a little bit. Then we'll launch right into the news. Lots of fun stuff to talk about. I'm sure I'll end up doing some goofy impressions. That's my prediction. Then we'll get into some comic book reviews. Look what came to me this week. Ed Piskor's last book, Switchblade Shorties. Excited to provide my thoughts and review on that piece. New Godzilla era over at IDW. Some of my favorite books like Feral and Exquisite Corpses, as well as Absolute Wonder Woman all came out. So a lot of stuff to talk about. And then I'll just talk a little bit about just business. Let's see. And we can get into this in more depth towards the end of the show, the cool down period when I'm inking and just chatting with everybody. Let me give some quick shout outs to everybody that showed up early. That's always exciting. Hello to all these wonderful folks. Reading All-Star Superman. Very nice. Great. Yeah, the Galactus costume in the thumbnail that I have, that's pretty amazing. One of the best cosplays I have seen. Live from the Negative Zone, musical guest, Annihilus, and your host, Chris, Comic Tropes Piers. Thank you, Don Pardo. Coming from the grave, Don Pardo, the great Don Pardo, just possessed me, a la Deadman, the DC Comics superhero. Hey, we're here for comic book jokes. What else is here? Nice to see you, though, West Coast Avengers. Thanks for setting me up there, buddy. Look at all these lovely faces. I'm probably missing a few people or tapping on the same name more than once, but I appreciate your contributions. We're going to have a good time tonight. That I can pretty much guarantee. You may notice I've got a little color. I don't know if you can tell or not. I wouldn't call it a sunburn, but it's definitely a bit of like color to my face. If you can't tell, it's because at the last minute, one of my lights went out. So I had to turn on my main lights, which I don't like having because my main room lights are directly overhead and they just sort of shine on me. I usually have sort of a spotlight that's over there, as in a light that spots me, but it went out like minutes before I started the show. So anyway, what do I have to recap? I'll give some deeper thoughts on Fantastic Four movie. No spoilers later in the show when I'm drawing, but I will say I personally liked it a lot. I would say, it's too bad that it came out so close in a way to Superman because people are going to compare each company's movie. And Superman definitely has more action and more fun. So it might be the bigger crowd pleaser or mainstream movie. But I thought Fantastic Four was great. I'd rather not compare them. I just had a great time. I think it's, as far as the Marvel movies have gone, the most respectful to Jack Kirby's ideas. I also did a last minute drop into the channel Bronze Age Nerd. Yesterday, he was doing a fundraiser for Mission 22. That's a charity that raises money for veterans against, self-harm. They're trying to raise money for therapy and stuff. And so I live drew this cover, Baroness. And if I put it in close, you might be able to see I added some screen tone to it. So that was kind of fun, some screen tone. A little bit janky towards the face because, of course, I had to white out the logo and in retrospect, if I did this again, I think what I'd rather do for something like this in the future, who knows if I'll even do that, maybe take, instead of whiteout, some Posca paint. Maybe I could do like a spot all the way around, like of a color, and then ink on top of that. I think that would look cleaner and more even. But hindsight is 50-50, as they say. All right, that's not what they say. But it was fun. So with all of that out of the way, why don't we get into the news of the week? Does that sound like it makes sense to everybody else here? Yeah, we'll do news.
We're sitting on top of the story of the century here.
Put an ad on the front page. Cash money for a picture of Spider-Man. He doesn't want to be famous, and I'll make him infamous.
Hi guys, this is April O'Neil from Channel 6 News, and I am here in beautiful New York City.
All right, there we go. So let me add this to the stage. I'm going to adjust the spacing a little. There we go. Yeah, this cosplay, I felt like I saw so many social media posts about it. If you haven't seen it, the guy is on a type of stilts. He's got these arm apertures, and he's kind of looking out through like the neck area. But it's gigantic, which befits Galactus. It lights up. I heard, but I'm not 100% sure, I heard that the cosplayer is known as Extreme Studios, not the Rob Liefeld. It's called something like that anyway. Not the old Rob Liefeld company. I could be wrong because I couldn't find really any active social media accounts for it. But anyway, just really good cosplay, so I thought that would be fun to throw in there. I'd love to give them more credit if I could figure out who did it, but it was mostly people taking pictures. So let's get into the news. We'll start off with the Ninja Turtles, because I love the Ninja Turtles. And TMNT is getting a new ongoing creative team for the monthly book. The Jason Aaron, Juan Ferreira era is got a couple more issues to it, but then a new creative team is going to continue the story, and that will be issue 13 will debut Gene Lun Yang writing and artist Freddie E. Williams II. Freddie Williams of Red Letter Media fame, right? Well, you say already. I mean, I think a year run is pretty good these days. You know, I think it's pretty good. The days of 3 to 5 year runs, they're not as common anymore, you know. But we'll see. You know, I liked Jason Aaron's run so far, but I am also kind of open to new ideas. I'm open to it. Oh, hey, it's Greg. Greg does a lot of the publicity for IDW. So hopefully, Greg, you got to go to San Diego Comic-Con. Looked like a lot of fun. Looked like you guys had plenty of news. Yeah, there's still 2 more issues of that. Let me talk a little bit about this team, though. Gene Lun Yang, by the way, folks, won not 1, not 2, not 4, but 3 Eisners this past weekend for his book, Lunar New Year. I haven't read it, and 3 Eisners makes me think I made a mistake by overlooking that. Best writer, best graphic album new, and best publication for teens. Congratulations to Gene Lun Yang. So, boy, was that well timed. That was really well timed. What else? Williams, pretty famous for working on Ninja Turtles with the Batman Ninja Turtles crossovers, which have evolved, of course, into an animated direct-to-video or direct-to-streaming movie. I don't know what you'd call that anymore. And even toys. So now he's getting to do the main title, but good for him. And if you don't know, Freddie Williams, longtime artist in the industry, but also friend to Red Letter Media, and he will occasionally sit in with them on things like Best of the Worst. And they also recently did a thing where they went hunting for ghosts. They went to see if they could do it with Freddie. So that's kind of cool. Oh yeah, Gene Lun Yang's American-Born Chinese was absolutely turned into a Disney Plus TV show. Very cool show. It sounds like a strong team. It does sound like a strong team. And I think that on the main title, you know, you got to keep putting on name high profile creators. You just have to. What else? IDW will also have a Godzilla TMNT book coming up. They announced that. There's a cover out there, and there's going to be some mashup toys. There's the cover that they shared. You guys know I love Godzilla. I love Godzilla. I don't love every single thing that Godzilla has appeared in. I will say that. But that's an interesting idea. I wonder what you could do with that. I feel like if I ever had a chance to do anything with Ninja Turtles, the first thing I'd want to do is just draw a cover with Donatello, my favorite turtle. But the second thing I would personally do is I would lean into some Japanese mythology. Maybe that's from talking to Zach Davison, who is, kind of one of the preeminent scholars in the West on yokai and Japanese folklore. Maybe it's from talking to him. But I also think, for instance, one famous monster in Japanese mythology that probably a bunch of you have heard of is the kappa, which looks quite a bit like a turtle and has like a bowl of water where its head should be. And supposedly if you spill that, it'll like sort of really mess him up. But I think a lot of societies will have a warning mythology about a creature in a river or the ocean or something, and it's to scare kids from drowning when they're too young, right? So I think that, like, if I just look at all mythologies. But how interesting would it be to play with those ideas? I mean, the Ninja Turtles have this lineage, right? They're clan Hamato. And I think it would be really interesting to, instead of having always a mutagen-powered enemy, have a supernatural-powered enemy. And they need to, like, learn some of their own history. Anyway, that's just an idea I have. And I'm just giving it out for free. Somebody will do it. Yeah, that's true. Usagi has used them. I think, in fact, the first time Usagi and the Turtles met, he may have confused them for Kappa. That happened in at least one story. So anyway, Greg is using his time, as he should, to promote IDW stuff. He says, revealed at SDCC, the foot in the crossover is called that because their origin connects to Godzilla's giant footprint. You know what? That's a clever little idea. That's very good. That's very good. Owen, we're not mad at you for being late this time, but I am going to dock you 1 hour's pay. And since I don't pay anyone, that means no harm, no foul. Thanks for joining us. All right, let's move on. What else have we got for news this week? Diamond has sold off Diamond UK. So, according to court filings, very boring stuff. Don't recommend to any of you to bother reading it. I feel like I need to for my job. But Diamond Comic Distributors, and that's the entity that owes money from the bankruptcy. They've announced that they intend to sell off Diamond UK, which is their European distribution arm, to the management of Diamond UK. So they'll sell it to the people that have been running Diamond UK for $2.1 million. That's actually a positive, in my opinion. To be clear, right now, there is now going to be this period where creditors could object or, say, like, I don't think this should go through because I think I have a claim to this. Who knows? But no matter what, the court is going to decide on this pretty soon on the 18th. I wouldn't be surprised if it goes through. Diamond UK has always remained a profitable entity. And the idea of, them being an employee group that owns themselves is probably a positive, probably a net positive for all the folks in Europe that want to continue getting American comics. I don't think we're quite at Chris Chan levels. You're going to like cut to me doing this show in like 4 more years. Diamond sold themselves. Anyway, that's a positive. We'll go with more announcements though. Marvel is going to use Mystic from the Crossgen comics. Who here remembers Crossgen comics? I know at least a few of you did. It was only about a 4-year run. I think it was 94 to 98 or something close to that. Anyway, September, Marvel's launching a book called Battleworld. They've already talked about that. I didn't really cover it on the news because, whatever. But just to level set, that's a series that focuses on all these different multiversal Marvel elements, and they all exist on one planet in different sections. Okay, it's just a fun way to do a bunch of multiverse stuff. Okay, a few people are saying that yeah, I try not to. Oh, come on. I'm sure you could sell those issues for something. Yeah, Crossgen was very interesting. So, anyway, yeah, shared Marvel Battleworld thing. 5-issue series. It's by writer Christos Gage, artist Marcus Toe. Marvel's solicitations for issue 2 just came in this week, and they indicate that it will feature this lady in the purple, Mystic from Crossgen, which Marvel's parent company Disney had previously purchased back in 2004. So maybe when I say 94 to 98, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was something closer to 98 to 2003, something along those lines. But anyway. So anyway, some other characters that they're going to have in this that could be fun. Starbrand from the late Jim Shooter's New Universe. Maestro, the potential future evil version of the Hulk. Bunch of Spider-Verse characters and a bunch more. But yeah. Mystic. Oh, and I'll just mention issue 2 is going to feature a variant cover by my favorite artist of all time. That's sarcasm. You could probably hear that. It's by Greg Land. And Greg Land was definitely one of the more famous people to have worked for Crossgen in the sense that he was really new to the industry and Crossgen gave him his boost. Obviously, they hired all sorts of amazing pros at the time, like Ron Mars and Jeff Johnson, and etc. But this Greg Land got a big boost in his profile working on the Crossgen title Sojourn. Who is that next to Arcade? I'll be honest, I'm not sure. Open to suggestions. I do not know who this big guy is. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I look at that and I go, is that like, a future Reed Richards? Or is that like the Mad Thinker? I have no idea. Exactly. This is the kind of place to use that. And the advantage to Marvel is they don't seem to have a whole lot of interest in bringing back full-time either Crossgen or the Ultraverse. But on the other hand, if you don't put this stuff in publication every so often, and I forget what it is, but it might be 11 years, you can risk losing the rights to intellectual property. So you do have to keep that stuff in some form of publication. Hank Pym? Oh, it does kind of look like Hank Pym. Man, maybe. Future Hank Pym? Marvel is introducing a new Silver Surfer. Is this corporate synergy? God, I love corporate synergy. When the company does something and then they force the creators to do something that's the same, I love that stuff. No, it's fine. It makes sense on a business level. But Marvel is currently publishing a series, Death of Silver Surfer. We've talked about that before on this. 2 issues have already come out, and it's focusing on the actual death, apparently, of Norrin Radd, the original Silver Surfer. We got a pun already. Pun alert! That's current Hank Pym? God, Hank, get yourself a day trip to the salon. My God, man. All right. The solicitations for issue 5 feature this cover by, and I don't know how to pronounce this, it might be DK Ruin, that features a new female Silver Surfer. Based on the body style and the hair, it seems super likely that this is a supporting character. If you've been reading that book, the character of Kelly Coe, She was supposed to be like a top S.H.I.E.L.D. graduate, served with SWORD, that's S.H.I.E.L.D.'s space-based agency, but now she works hunting down Silver Surfer for the Bureau of Alien Neutralization, or BAN. Okay, that makes sense. It's written by Greg Pak, like his work. Art by Sumit Kumar. Available October 16th, this is. Is there anything else? No, I guess that's it. All I can say is, well, they obviously had a female Silver Surfer in the movie, so maybe that's why they want to have one in the comic. And to be clear, I don't know for a fact that that is Kelly Coe, one of the supporting characters, but I think it's likely. Do I think it's Shala Bal? No, I don't really think so. Angela Silver Surfer? Again, going by the hair, I say no. I don't mind them, but to each their own. To each their own. I do kind of like a little bit the slightly different surfboard, I have to admit. Just because it's kind of a boring shape sometimes. But shapes are good. Shapes are cool, but the oval is less pleasing to me than circles, if it makes sense. So we'll see what happens. Marvel has announced 5 new titles, cosmic titles, if I want to be technical. And I do want to be technical. Call me C-3PO, because I'm the most technical man alive. So here's one thing that Marvel talked about at San Diego Comic-Con. They announced they will have these 5 new cosmic titles that will be rolling out from their 4-issue Imperial event. C.B. Cebulski and Tom Brevoort were on hand to talk about it, as well as a writer and an artist. But yeah, they explained the premise of the first 2 of the books, the ones coming out in November. After that, Black Panther, Exiles, Imperial Guardians, question mark. But Planet She-Hulk is going to be by Stephanie Phillips, art by Aaron Cooter, and it features She-Hulk stuck on Sakaar. Well, she's a very different character than a Hulk. She's not necessarily going to be, world breaker Jen, but we'll see what happens. Nova Centurion, that's by Jed McKay with art by Alvaro Lopez, features Richard Rider as a reluctant mercenary. I like Richard Rider, but that's because, what can I say? I grew up with him as the main Nova, so I don't really know Sam. Is it Sam Alexander? I don't really know Sam Alexander very well. I don't know what to expect out of Exiles. I assume Imperial Guardians will basically just be a new version of Guardians of the Galaxy, led by Star-Lord. And it looks like coming out of this, we'll just probably have the Kree, Skrull, and Shi'ar Empire all one government now. But I like She-Hulk, so Planet She-Hulk is a maybe for me. Planet She-Hulk is a maybe. The others I'm not as excited about, but maybe. What else have we got? A few more Marvel things. As I speculated last week from John Byrne's posts on his forum, it was confirmed at San Diego Comic-Con, John Byrne's X-Men Elsewhen 32-issue fanfic for X-Men. Let's face it, I mean, that's basically what it is until it hits publication. It will be published. However, there are wrinkles to that. There are wrinkles. Confirmed at San Diego Comic-Con and with a press release by writer-artist John Byrne. I'll call this his what-if style take on X-Men. It's going to see print, but technically not from Marvel. Technically not from Marvel, just to be clear. Byrne wrote and penciled over the last several years 32 issues of X-Men, and the premise is pretty simple. He ended his run with Chris Claremont with the Dark Phoenix saga. His premise, Byrne's, is what if Jean Grey survived that? The Phoenix entity was stopped, but what if she didn't die? You know, everything happens, but she just didn't die. And then, like, what are the wrinkle effects? And it stays back in that era of everything. It's an interesting idea. Hey, thanks, Steve. Time for ice cold Mountain Dew Baja Blast. You know what I'd really love is I really like that sugar-free Mountain Dew Summer Breeze, but you can't find it anywhere. I tried it once, and Chrissy was showing me people are selling it for like silly prices, like a 12-pack of cans for like $37 online. I was like, it's good. It's not that good. But thank you for the support, Steve. Yeah. Oh, did somebody ask? He did not ink any of it. So there's sort of a small group of inkers, some professional and one or two amateurs from his forum. And I guess John Byrne himself must be making the call on what he thinks was executed best. So he wrote, penciled, probably lettered it, but yeah, now it's going to get that would be cool. I think that John Byrne always looked best when Terry Austin was inking him. But if they could get somebody else from that era, like a Joseph Rubinstein, I'd be pretty excited. What else do I have to say about this? There will be 3 volumes. Makes sense. 32 issues. So they're basically putting at least 10 issues per volume. And it's being released as part of Abrams Comic Arts Marvel Arts line. Now, you may remember, I don't know if I still have it here. No, I don't have mine handy. Abrams published that Alex Ross Fantastic Four book the other year, where he sort of just did more of a deep dive into a classic Stan Lee, Jack Kirby issue. And it looked great. Steve, jealous. Good job. Good job. But thank you very much for the support. All right, don't get ahead of me, Ethan. If you're going to guess everything, what am I even doing here? Wait, what am I doing here? All right. Yes, Ethan is right. It will be hardcovers. So, Volume 1, April 2026. Volume 2 in the fall. Volume 3 going all the way to spring of 2027. They're spreading it out. I don't blame them. But all 3 volumes? English. Who needs it? Yeah. I was about to start talking in Japanese, but that would be obnoxious. All 3 volumes will be released as 7.5 by 11.5 hardcovers, feature over 200 pages of story and art, and then bonus materials. I don't know what the bonus materials would be, but if they included some essays by Byrne explaining what he wanted to do, I would be really interested in that. You know, Byrne's not, I'm not going to call him elderly, but he's old, a lot older than, you know, the 80s and 70s and 90s, those sort of era where he was, you know, the biggest thing in comics. And he doesn't do a lot of publicity anymore. I hope he does. I hope he does do some interviews. I would love to talk to him if he decides to go that route, but I don't know. Interview Byrne? Who knows if he'd even be up for that, even if he does interviews. I don't know how much it would cost. I'd be curious to see if anybody out there has a guess. About 200 pages, hardcover. You know, what's a fair price on something like that? $50 these days? I'm just guessing. I'm ballparking there really loose. I mean, they could go a lot more. Maybe they could cut us a deal. I don't know. He would definitely shoot me. Oh, thanks, folks. Amazon has it listed at $39.99. Wow. If that's a really good price, in my opinion. 200 pages for $40, hardcover. I'll get it. I'll definitely be getting it. Here's another thing that was announced that I think on paper sounds fantastic. But Palmiotti is returning for the Marvel Knights anniversary that they're doing right now, as he should. He is one of the co-creators. So Marvel continues to celebrate their Marvel Knights history, their imprint. They've got a second book set in that the world to come potential future universe, okay? Right now we've got the world to come, and it's mostly a Black Panther story. Joe Quesada and Christopher Priest, two key figures in the original Marvel Knights. But now we've got this book, and this is by Jimmy Palmiotti, who, let us not forget, was a co-founder of the Marvel Knights imprint, oversaw all that stuff. Yes, Joe Quesada then got appointed as editor-in-chief, but Jimmy Palmiotti oversaw Marvel Knights, which radically changed Marvel's sagging fortunes at the time. Huge, huge, huge. And yeah, so he's going to do a 4-issue Punisher title with artist Dan Panosian. Palmiotti, Panosian, Punisher, perfection. That sounds awesome to me. That sounds fantastic. Palmiotti promised that his take on Frank Castle will push him into new, brutal territory. As it should. As it should. I mean, we know that Dan and Jimmy are pals and they get along. I think that this is a great character for both of them. Just everything on paper sounds like a really good fit for this. Like, I love the idea. I think it's really strong. And I'm really glad that it's not just Quesada and Christopher Priest for this Marvel Knights anniversary, that Jimmy Palmiotti is coming back for it. That's really great to hear. Oh my God. I mean, Dan Panosian, like he really pushes himself as an artist. It's incredible to look at his career. Let's see. Welcome Back, Frank was a blast, and he inked that, if I remember correctly. I'm pretty sure that he did. Obviously Palmiotti has also written an awful lot, like Harley Quinn and Jonah Hex. Obviously that's more for DC, but he's overseen stuff as an editor. He's one of the best inkers out there. I didn't see anything about him inking this, but I also wouldn't be surprised. Very cool. I'll have to take a look at that. His covers are just incredible, but that book he just did, Canary, a Western horror with Scott Snyder, might be almost a year ago now. Really, really good. Dan mentored you? That's awesome, Chris. He's just really, I really respect the hell out of Dan Panosian, especially not because I ever disliked his art. It's just, you've seen this evolution, and it's always exciting when a comic book artist pushes themselves and evolves. Some people, for instance, see the current Frank Miller as they don't like that. But I go, you know what? It may be cartoony and it may be weird, but it's eye-catching, and I love that he's pushing himself. He's trying different things. I love artists that don't just settle for the grind. That's really cool. Sarah does so much to keep her grandfather's legacy alive. Just incredible. Anyway, I think that this sounds exciting. Marvel said that Ultimate Spider-Man is ending. Do we believe them, folks? Let me give you some news before you vote. So first of all, Marvel held an Ultimate Spider-Man panel at San Diego. Guest Jonathan Hickman, the writer of the title, was there. And he said the title is concluding at issue 24, just ahead of the small event Ultimate Endgame, which is going to feature the heroes of the Ultimate Universe going up against the villain, the Maker. Great villain. Hickman explained that the series is not being canceled, but it's reaching its natural pre-planned conclusion. He says that he got to do exactly what he wanted to do with this title, which, knowing that he definitely had this 2-year plan, I'm a little surprised, because I thought that there were some issues that felt like it was going a little slow and not pushing forward the narrative thrust. There have been some fantastic issues, to be clear. But I was really surprised to hear that. Here's a quote. Hickman said, quote, "This was everything that I pitched. Nothing has deviated. It's been really nice to execute the plan well, and everything culminates into this issue. Fans of the Ultimate Universe are going to love it. It's been a real pleasure being the writer of Ultimate Spider-Man. I will say that it's been pretty focused. You know, it has been about Peter, his family, his friend, his new friend, Harry Osborn, and the Sinister Six. And it hasn't, like, drifted away from that. So that's kind of cool. So Ultimate Spider-Man number 24, that comes out December 24th. Forget Christmas Eve, last minute shopping, folks. Get yourself your comics. And that's going to be followed a week later by Ultimate Endgame number 1. But let's be honest. Don't we think that it's going to end, there'll be this event, and then they're just going to start it with a new number 1? It feels like with sales the way they are, that would definitely be leaving a lot of money on the table. I feel like that's just too obvious. But is it ending? I guess on a technical level, I'm sure it is. Marvel doesn't really want to make Hickman mad. You know why Marvel is lucky to get a guy like Jonathan Hickman is he gives them stuff. You know, he gives them concepts. He had an idea for the Krakoa era of X-Men, and he planned for that to be much smaller than what Marvel made out of it. And now he's doing Imperial. He gives them these ideas that they can really grow on. And a lot of writers these days are not going to create too many new characters for the company, because if it's a great idea, they're usually going to want to hold that for their creator-owned ideas. So they're lucky to have Jonathan Hickman, in my opinion. Yeah, I would not be surprised if there's a price to be paid, if one of the family or Peter himself. That is one cool thing about this Ultimate line is I could see anybody that's been in this book dying. The book could continue in different ways without any of them, which would be interesting. I don't think that they're canceling it out of spite. I think that this is just reaching its natural endpoint. You know, we had a comment maybe a month or so ago by the script adapter of Ultimate X-Men, Zach Davison, saying that title would be ending after a 2-year run. So I think all the first Ultimate books probably had a very specific 2-year plan. They'll have this event, and then they'll sort of start picking up from wherever that ends. I think that is a very good way of defining it. Absolutely, Rami. And thank you for the support. You say Marvel, it's really an industry thing. The fact is, the days of somebody looking at comics out in a convenience store and sort of getting a hint of the story on the cover are long gone. Covers these days look cool, but they don't usually tell the story that's happening inside, right? They don't hint at what's inside the pages. They just look good. Variant covers and new numbering with number 1 is what gets people to try something, because to them, they know it's an easy jumping on point. So I get that on a business level. I really do. That's just the way the business is these days. What I appreciate is when they also have a legacy numbering, so that if you really like it, it's not too hard to say, I want to get like the previous runs and get up to this point. What else have we got for news? Erik Larsen returning to Spider-Man. Who had this on their bingo card? Not me, but Erik gets Spider-Man. Let's see. You'd think people would get used to this after 60 years of Marvel doing this. It's comics. It's been like this a long time. I don't know if they've been starting with new issue ones all the time, but Dave is definitely right that, like, how many times has Doctor Strange or, you know, sort of one of their like B-level titles restarted its numbering? It absolutely happens. It just happens a little bit more now, but it isn't just Marvel. Every publisher does it. Every publisher does it. All right. So how is Erik Larsen coming back? He is going to be writing, not drawing, just to be clear, writing Spider-Man Noir. And that's a new miniseries from Marvel that launches in October. It's going to be drawn by Andrea Broccardo, who I can only assume is from Italy, like half the artists in Marvel's payroll. Larsen famously drew Amazing Spider-Man and then wrote and drew adjectiveless Spider-Man over 30 years ago now, folks, before he co-founded Image Comics and began his creator-owned series, still running today, Savage Dragon. Set in the 1930s, Gwen Stacy hires private detective Peter Parker to solve her father's murder, kicking off a gritty new mystery. Yeah, at Comic-Con, Larsen was like, editor Nick Lowe approached me and was like, I want you to write Spider-Man Noir. And Larsen was like, boy, I'll be honest, the only thing I know about Spider-Man Noir was from the recent Spider-Verse movie. I don't know those comics. And they were like, there's not a lot to know, you know? And I think that you have a good take on this kind of material. You're the guy I want. And Larsen's like, I'll do it. I'll write it. Good for him. How does he have time? You know, I agree. You know, he's writing and drawing his own book, but he has done other projects in the past. He has done small runs where he also draws a second title sometimes, or writes. I'm pretty sure that while he's done Savage Dragon, he's had runs on things like Defenders and I think Aquaman and some other stuff. As well as, keep in mind, he was publisher at Image Comics for quite a long time. So he's a guy that can do it. That's all I can say. He's found a lot of time now that he's cut out sleeping. Nova, Defenders. That's right. He had a Wolverine run. That's right. Kind of cosmic. I forgot for a minute. Oh, I mean, it's totally a run built to build up our knowledge of Spider-Man Noir, just as the Prime Video show is about to jump. So that makes sense. Yes. Who needs sleep? The secret is in the way he holds his pen. This is how Larsen draws with his whole arm. If you've never seen it, he really like curves like the whole thing around, and like he's a prisoner guarding his food. He protects his drawing, and it works for him. I love Erik Larsen's art. I generally really love his writing as well. I thought that his adjectiveless Spider-Man run, kind of brief, really, really good. And Erik Larsen was the artist on the second best-selling Spider-Man run of all time. Mark Bagley is number one. You'd think McFarlane, right? Well, McFarlane put Spider-Man into like superstar status. It continued to build as Larsen was the artist, and then it built even more as Bagley took over, just to be clear. I've heard that, but I have not seen video or pictures of Tradmore drawing. But I'm going to soon, because after talking to West Coast Day Avengers for coffee last week, I'm very inclined to sometime in the near future, not this week, but sometime in the near future, I think I want to do an analysis of Tradmore's storytelling. You know, I've always loved the idea of doing a deep dive for an entire run of a comic. Like each episode is really inspecting each issue. So more power to you, Contemporary Comics. It becomes very niche as time goes on, but I respect that, and I love the idea. And to some extent, Jim Mahfood and I are thinking of doing something a little like that. We are planning, not in a row, but we are planning on doing the entire Friday the 13th series. So we're going to do episode 1 pretty soon, just on Trash Movie Bonanza. We're gonna do that. You know, there is a prequel series by A24, Crystal Lake, about Pamela Voorhees. So we're gonna slowly do that. James Stokoe also has an insane pen grip. Really? All right. Moving on. New Marvel DC talent announced. How fun is this cover, by the way? I like that. I like that a lot. So the upcoming Deadpool Batman one-shot, that's the one that Marvel publishes. That comes out September 17th, pretty soon, really. It's going to have variant covers by, as you can see here, first of all, Russell Dodderman, but also Frank Miller and Daniel Warren Johnson. I meant to do that in order, but Frank Miller, Daniel Warren Johnson. Let me back up and do the news. Marvel will also feature a backup story in this by Al Ewing and DK Ruin, as we look on the right side of the image, featuring, they say Green Lantern and Rocket Raccoon, but that is clearly Green Arrow. And down here is Green Lantern. And to be clear, at the Marvel, I'm totally confused, but at the Marvel retailer panel at San Diego Comic-Con, they said that the crossover is Green Arrow and Rocket Raccoon, which sounds even more nuts. But now in the press release, it says that it's Green Lantern, Rocket Raccoon, which are both, space-based characters. So I don't know if it has all three of them or what. I just don't know anymore because the messaging just got messed up. But there we go. That's an interesting cover. And that's fun. The Thing versus Big Barda. Just two powerhouses going at it. I like that so many people are getting involved, even if they're small stories or just variant covers. It's pretty cool that they've Marvel and DC are gathering all sorts of talent and weird characters. Yeah, I don't know what the cover price is. I don't know how many pages. The twist. I agree. Green Lantern and Rocket Raccoon makes a certain amount of sense. They're both space-based characters, but the retailer panel and this image do show Green Arrow and Rocket Raccoon. So I just don't know which is correct. All right. We'll see. Got to keep going. There's lots to talk about tonight. DC is going to cross over Absolute Batman and Wonder Woman, as you can see in this image. No, but DC had an all-in panel, and they revealed that Batman will appear in issue 15 of Absolute Wonder Woman, and that will be drawn by the series artist Hayden Sherman. Comes out December 24th. I like that. I'm very curious to see what these characters will be like interacting, because they're, especially Batman, is pretty different than the Batman we know in the mainstream universe. History and powers wise, this Absolute Wonder Woman is very different, but in terms of personality, I think her compassion is still like her dominant trait. Absolute Wonder Bat. What is he holding? You must not have been reading the book, but he can take the big bat symbol off of his chest and make it into like a battle axe. He can attach a pole to it, and it can be like this like sort of hammer that he swings around, or an axe. So if you look here, he's got sort of a patterning, but like this piece attaches here. Anyway, this is a Batman who's an engineer and an inventor. So he has lots and lots of gadgets. And as I talked about last week, he will turn his own body and body parts into weapons. Teeth become brass knuckles. Stomach acid becomes a weapon against his captors. Scott Snyder, of course, spoke at this panel. Talking about Absolute Batman, he had some interesting comments. He said that Deathstroke will soon appear in the book as a former friend of Alfred. That makes a certain amount of sense, considering Alfred in this is an active MI6 spy, and Deathstroke has traditionally been, at least in the military. And in the mainstream comics, he's got his friend Wintergreen, who's kind of like Alfred in a lot of ways. Anyway, he noted that not all classic villains that they reinterpret for Absolute Batman will be villains. I think we've already seen a lot of that with the fact that Bruce Wayne's friends group is people that we know as villains, but are really just his friends at this point. And he also said that he's soon going to introduce Red Hood and Scarecrow. Those are interesting character choices. I wouldn't have guessed Red Hood at all. Jock is going to reteam with Snyder on Absolute Batman starting in December when they begin with their take on Joker. He really is an absolute beast. He's super tall and super heavy. Hayden Sherman has had a fantastic year. Just fantastic. Really, really good artist. It's exciting to see an artist come into their own. But boy, do I have another artist that's come into their own and is working like an absolute maniac. We joke about some of these people like, oh, Erik Larsen's given up his sleep because he's writing a book on top of his own. But who does the most in comics? I think we can all guess. Who seems to be able to do the most in comics if we had to guess right today? I'll before I move on to the next story, I will allow people put in who you think I'm talking about. Who seems to be doing the most in comics? I do not think it is necessarily Daniel Warren Johnson. I definitely do think it's Dan Mora. John Hickman, Dan Mora, Mark Waid, Peach Momoko. She does do a lot, actually. But yeah, Dan Mora is who I'm talking about. Me. Peach is up there. Peach is up there. Let's just be clear. But let me go, all right? So, I'm going to get into it a little in this. DC's event, KO, got some explaining done at convention time. Me talk good in order like Yoda. Apparently, Stan Lee didn't work as much as he would like us to think he did. All right, so what is KO? At the All-In panel, the people overseeing this, Scott Snyder, Joshua Williamson, explained that DC KO, their fight event, doesn't stand for knockout. It stands for King Omega because Darkseid is back. He's more powerful than ever, and the heroes have decided that they are going to have a battle to see who can take on Darkseid. And the winners of this will somehow take on the energy of those they defeat. I don't think they're killing them, but this is basically Highlander rules, okay? There can be only one. Ramirez, my old friend. Hey, that wasn't too bad, right? Ramirez, my old friend. There can be only one. I like Highlander. So, 5-level tournament. First fighters named include Captain Atom, Guy Gardner, Supergirl, Wonder Woman, Swamp Thing, Zatanna, Lobo, Cyborg, and Red Hood. Guess what? I don't think Red Hood's going all the way to the end. Just saying. My impression is more like Highlander 2. I'll take it. It's me, Highlander, the old Egyptian Ramirez. Remember, if you lose your head, it's all over. Those are some cool combatants. Side stories to the event will include things like Mr. Terrific leading a new team called the Terrific 10 on a Suicide Squad type mission. Mark Waid's writing that. I'm not surprised to see Mr. Terrific getting a big boost these days. Flash and Aquaman have big stuff going on where they're going to get power boosts. And something called Night Fight by Williamson and, say it with me, Dan Mora. How? How is he doing all these books? He was just announced to be working on Transformers. I can only assume that's basically going to be an arc, you know, like maybe 6 issues, right? Because he's still doing all this DC stuff. I don't get it. Oh, cool. Love your work. Learned a lot from your channel. Thank you for the super chat. I appreciate you being here. Thank you very, very much. Oh, and one other thing. Superman will fight with mini sun brass knuckles. That's what he's got going on here. Mini suns acting as brass knuckles. How does Superman lose at that point, right? I mean, it's got to be Superman that wins this thing. I don't know. Maybe Dan Mora trained an LLM on his own art. What's an LLM? Is that like an AI thing? I don't know. The return of Amazing Man. The man who could take on the powers of whatever he touched, right? Like he was basically Absorbing Man. Let's just call him that. He's Absorbing Man. I think I saw Night Fight is Batman versus Robins who have become Batmans in universes where he died. That sounds like it makes some sense. Anyway. League Learning Model. Large language model. Okay, and I'm seeing it. Yeah. I don't think so, because I think it would still make mistakes, but he's really, really working hard. Oh, Amazing Man is different than Amazing Man? Does DC literally have Amazing and Amazing Man? Wow. I know Amazing Man, but I guess I don't necessarily know Amazing Man. All right. Invincible gets some big updates, including a new comic. You know what? I just realized I don't think I put all my notes into this slide, but let's see. So, first of all, Jada Toys. If you haven't seen them before, they do licensed toys. Smaller scale, really good sculpting and lots of posability. They've got some really cool Judge Dredd toys out there, for instance. But anyway, Jada Toys announced that they got the license to make Invincible action figures. We'll begin seeing Wave 1 drop next year, and they showed their prototypes of that. First 3 characters will all be from Season 3, which just aired. Conquest, Invincible in his blue and black outfit, and Kid Omni-Man, young Oliver. Yeah, I like Jada Toys. I'm inclined to get, at the very least, Invincible out of this. You can see, like, there's a lot of joints, a lot of different things. You know, the butterfly hinge, in the sort of chest shoulder, a ball joint at the shoulder, lots of different things. Makes it very posable. I like it. I'm a little surprised too. All I can figure is, you know, Jada Toys does make good stuff, and they probably approached Skybound. That's my best guess. Oh, I'm sure there will be battle damage variants. Come on. Absolutely there will be. What else have we got? Well, you can see from this image, and you may have guessed, but at the panel that Robert had for Skybound, he did confirm that actor Matthew Rhys will voice Dinosaurus in Season 4. Dinosaurus is definitely a big villain. He's not the ultimate big bad Thrag. That they're still keeping a secret who will be doing that voice. But Dinosaurus is an incredibly powerful villain and an incredibly smart villain. Very tragic character as well. So, yeah, they've got that. And then I guess, Robert said that the show, in his estimation, would take between 7 to 9 seasons if they wanted to adapt the entire comic book run. Keep in mind, they've just gotten an early renewal through Season 5, so they're pretty damn close. And as long as the ratings hold up, I would expect we probably will get a full adaptation. I forgot to include it here. I'm an idiot. Capes. Capes will also return. Capes was set in the Invincible shared universe. It was written by Robert Kirkman, illustrated by really good friend of mine, Mark Englert. It was a limited series, and it focused on an organization called Capes, where superheroes did their job for pay. They would get, the organization would get contracts to defend a city or something, and people would punch in and out on a clock. It mostly focused on a guy named Bolt. So it's like a blue-collar superhero workforce. And it was kind of funny. It was cool. I liked it a lot. One thing I've had to keep secret for a while now is that Mark has been completely remastering the entire run. He's been redrawing, at least to some extent, almost every single page and panel because he felt that he had to kind of rush originally, and now he can take his time. And I've seen a lot of these pages. They're incredible. But beyond that, Capes will continue with new issues once the remastered ones come out. There's like 6, I think it was a 6-issue series. And Benito Cereno will be the writer continuing. Benito has written Adam Eve, Guardians of the Globe. He's written a bunch of stuff in the Invincible universe. If you ever saw that Adam Eve episode about her origin from the adaptation of Invincible, that was based on a comic by Benito Cereno and artist Nate Bellegarde. So these days, Benito is writing, like, now with Capes, 3 books at Skybound. He's doing his own thing, Blood and Thunder, with E.J. Sue. He's writing, what's the other one he's writing? All of a sudden I'm blanking. Benito, I'm so sorry. Oh, no, I guess I'm confusing things. The other one he's doing in the Invincible universe will be Capes, but he's also doing Hectoplasm. So, yeah. So, it's really cool. I'm excited to see Capes come back. Folks, trust me, the artwork is going to blow your minds. It's really, really good. Exactly. Battle Beast is doing well. People want more Invincible. Invincible kind of wrapped up its story, but there's so many characters in that universe that you could still expand on and do more stories with. Tech Jacket, Brit, Capes. Speaking of Skybound stuff, the Energon universe is going to have 2 wars, 2 events going on at the same time. Let me explain. So first of all, these are happening in the titles Void Rivals and G.I. Joe. No war in Transformers right now. That's nice. In issue 25 of Void Rivals, it's going to get a new artist, Andre Bresson. Great artist. He did the he did the Destro miniseries. He did a great book with Joshua Williamson back in the day called it's like a year or so ago, called Dark Ride. It's a good artist. I think he recently did a fill-in issue of Uncanny X-Men with Gail Simone, now that I think of it. So anyway, he's going to be the new ongoing artist in Void Rivals. So issue 25 is when he joins, and that's going to kick off an 8-part event called the Quintesson War. I don't want to give away anything more than that. That's enough. Artist Tom Riley, signed an exclusive deal with Skybound. And so he's going to return to G.I. Joe in issue 13. And that's going to begin the Dreadnok War, which I believe is only 5 issues. And that book will start shipping twice a month in October. Pretty cool. Capes is interesting, but it's a little less heroes for hire and a little bit more just like a look at blue collar people. And it's, even though there's one central main character, it's a pretty wide cast. Kid Thor, Knockout, all sorts of weirdos. It's a little different. Love Void Rivals so far. G.I. Joe just does not connect for me. See, I'm a little bit more into G.I. Joe, but that's just my background. Issue 12 of G.I. Joe, right before they kick off the Dreadnok War, will introduce Shooter. She's a sniper, and she's going to be on the secret side team of G.I. Joe that Duke and his main cast do not know about, but Flint and Lady J are running another thing for General Hawk called Night Force. It's like a sort of a Black Ops version of G.I. Joe. That's really cool. But I love the Dreadnoks. The Dreadnoks are awesome. I just love the idea that these like Australian biker mercenaries are out there. They're totally unhinged. They're just chaos. And here's the best part. if you don't know, at one point, Marvel wanted the Dreadnoks to be talking teddy bear monsters because the Ewoks were popular. Okay. And Larry Hama was like, no, that does not fit with what I am writing for these file cards and the comic. He's like, there's some sci-fi, but like teddy bear monsters, like, no, that's not happening. He goes, so what else is popular now? Mad Max. What if I created some bikers that like dressed up a lot like Mad Max and they were mercenaries? And Hasbro's like, oh, well, that could be cool too. So that it's just a funny bit of history where G.I. Joe Hasbro really could have shot themselves in the foot and tanked the brand by just making it too stupid right away. Fortunately, Larry Hama saved it. All right. Continuing with the news. Some new artists editions. Look at these, folks. Tell me you wouldn't want either of these. On Friday, Scott Dunbier announced his next two artists editions that will be published through Skybound. They'll come out in 2026. As you can see, Amazing Spider-Man by Steve Ditko, New Teen Titans by George Perez. Both of those sound really interesting. These, if you don't know, it's where they get all the original pages to a story and get clean scans of exactly how the page looks before it's professionally cleaned up and colored and lettered and everything. So you really get a sense of what the artist does. If there were patches to correct a panel, you see that. If there's underlying blue lines or sketch marks before it's inked, you see that. And it's really cool. Correct. Scott Dunbier has a company now called Act 4. He created these things originally, I think it was at IDW, but now he's doing it on his own. And Skybound is his partner for publishing it. There was an episode, and sometimes I've wondered if that is like the remnants of that idea, but it could have just been a crazy idea by the show writers. I don't know. Nerd nonsense. Two really big heavy hitters. Great choices. They really are. Thank you, Steve. They really are. I don't blame you. They both look like really interesting books to appreciate and learn from. But on top of that, just keep in mind, they've announced some really good ones. So the first releases for Act 4, they haven't come out quite yet, but they're going to have Jim Aparo's DC Classics Artist Edition, Darwin Cook's The Complete Spirit Connoisseur Edition, that's September and October. And then future releases that they've announced include J. Scott Campbell's Danger Girl, Dave Stevens, the late great Dave Stevens, Covers and Stories, Jason Pearson, another late great, Jason Pearson's Body Bags, Paul Smith, underrated great artist, Paul Smith's Leave It to Chance, and EC Comics Artists Editions. Great, great, great artists all around. Pretty good variety, too, of stories and publishers and backgrounds. It's really, really cool. I don't blame you. They probably have, but I don't remember them. I should have looked it up. I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. Great artist. Buffy and Angel are returning to comics, folks. Hey, I'm a nerd. I grew up at the right time. Love Buffy and Angel. I don't know if my sister's still in the chat, but my sister and I would definitely watch Buffy together for a certain window when we were both living at home. For me, just after college. Yeah, we both liked it. And now I've gotten my wife to get into it. We haven't finished it together, but yeah. So Dynamite announced that they will create new comics based on both Buffy and Angel. All right. David Nakayama will provide covers. Came up with this promo piece for the announcement. Going to have a kiddie pool full of cold Baja Blast. That gets a double salute. Not easy, but double salute. Double salute. What else? Kelly Thompson will write both series. That's a good pull. I have loved Kelly Thompson's Absolute Wonder Woman. She's crushing it these days. A vampire hunter? No thanks. I can understand the fear of actual Dracula. I understand. Yeah, about 2 years ago. Baja Blast is just a Mountain Dew variation variety. Anyway, this will be the third publisher historically for Buffy. Dark Horse did have the license for a really long time, 98 to 2018. There was a big window within that where a bunch of the people that worked on the TV show became involved, and they sort of canonically continued the show, supposedly. Depends how much you count that as canon. I imagine that the next TV show will not count it as canon, but that's just me. Some of it was good. Some of it was like average because some of it got too big. But anyway, and then Boom held it from 2018 through 2023. They sort of did a fresh reboot, like setting Buffy and the characters in the modern day. That's cool. A new TV series with Sarah Michelle Gellar mentoring a new Slayer will debut on Hulu next year. So that's yeah, I think Disney is overseeing all that. But I loved the show. At the same time, I hope that the show doesn't try to bring back everybody like that was even a main character on the show, because you can't bring back Xander these days. You just can't. He's unfortunately, like, the actor's gone through a bunch of stuff, and it's just too problematic. I think you got to just say Buffy and a bunch of new cast. I don't think Disney had the rights originally, to be clear. They were with those people. What are their names? I can't remember, but they're two movie producers. So and remember, that was originally on the WB, right? That was a WB show, but it was produced by some other smaller company. So I don't think it was ever like rights that 20th Century Fox or Disney had. I think that the rights laid with a producer. I can't remember the name of the producers. Did you know that Dolly Parton was a silent producer on Buffy? It's true. You can look it up. Dolly Parton was a silent producer on that show. I liked Buffy. At the time, I just, yeah, I liked it all. I liked it all. I miss it sometimes. Sometimes it's of its era. I felt like that they were just always trying good creative things. They had a lot of creative people, a lot of great writers on it. Yeah, like obviously Joss Whedon turned out to not be so great, but you know, we still like the first Avengers movie and Buffy and Angel and Firefly. You know, he oversaw or got started a lot of good stuff. Anything remotely cool is probably connected to Dolly Parton. She's fantastic. Dude, Dynamite got Supernatural, now Buffy and Angel. They're getting, like, they've got all these Disney and Warner Brothers licenses. They're doing a good job. They're doing a really good job. And Kelly Thompson is fantastic. David Nakayama is fantastic. I just hope that they get a really great artist for the interior. They always get good writers. I wish that they got just absolute top tier artists for inside. It was a little sad that Angel didn't really get to, they assumed that they were going to get to continue, so they sort of had to rush their ending. But I was satisfied with how they ended it. Anyway, sorry, I could talk about Buffy forever. No, it wasn't CW. There was UPN and WB. And now I can't remember which one Buffy was on, to be honest. I said WB, but maybe it was UPN. Maybe it was the Paramount one. And then there was Angel, the spinoff. And I think Angel continued maybe into the first year of the CW. Maybe. I don't really remember now. I don't remember. Yes, exactly. Dan Mora is the interior artist. Well, we could always look it up. So, Ignition is doing something interesting. They're going to number each of their comics, not like, the number that we see, like, oh, this is issue 15. No, they're going to like individually give a serial number, apparently. Thank you. That's right. Buffy started on WB and Angel was on WB. Then WB renewed Angel but canceled Buffy. WB continued to do Angel for a couple years, and Buffy got renewed by UPN for 2 more seasons. So it was 5 seasons on WB and then 2 more on UPN, which made like they'd still cross over a little bit, but not as much as they used to. That's right. Anyway, so this came through the Instagram page of Sean Kirkham, who goes by the handle Big Clutch, if you know him. He's been an editor at Skybound, and nowadays he does his own thing, mostly selling variant covers, kind of like Comic Tom does. And he posted this to his Instagram. He noticed something interesting. He supported Ignition Presses. They're, a new company. Ignition Presses' first comic, which was done on Kickstarter, Murder Podcast, The Cold Open. And he noticed that his issues had these 4-digit codes printed inside. Well, it turns out Ignition is including a randomly generated unique serial number to each issue so that it makes each one unique. And it prints them out of order to make them more collectible, but also to keep, say you were like some sort of a flipper. You might be trying to buy the first batch of 100 or something, because those would be more valuable. But now those first 100 could have different serial numbers. So it like varies it up, and like anybody has a fair chance to get a low serial number. Anyway, just a different way of doing things. I think that there was at least one company that did the serial number thing in like the 90s, but I can't remember who it was. It was a smaller company for sure. I'm curious if it'll mean anything to fans or if it'll like fade away. I really don't know, but I thought I'd mention it at least. Just looking through each one, throwing it on the ground. I want 6969. Where is it? That was it. Triumphant Comics. Thank you. One moment. Okay, sorry. Yeah, it was just an Amber Alert. That was it. All right, moving on. Let's wrap up the news. Vault has vowed to make things right with retailers because they made a mistakey poo on their recent Post Malone Big Rig thing. By the way, this is my cover that I got. I got the chrome. I never do that, but it's a Daniel Warren Johnson thing. I'll show it off under the other camera when I do my reviews. Try to interview Byrne. I really don't know if he's got like an agent or a manager or anything like that. And I don't love the idea of trying to just become a new person on his forum and then instantly hit him up for an interview. I feel like you will get yelled at on his very cliquey forum for that. But I would be interested in talking to him. All right, so what did Vault do? So first of all, Vault made a mistake with a recent program. They had a bundle box that you could get of Big Rig #1. It was mostly for retailers. And inside, you were supposed to be able to get any of their variant covers. It was randomly assorted, supposedly. So you could get, but here's what happened. Instead of getting random things, people would open it and have like 6 of the same cover or 3 of the same cover. And you'd be like, well, that's definitely not random. One person opened it up and it was all Peach Momoko rare. 1 out of every 500 copies published or printed had a Peach Momoko cover, and they got nothing but Peach Momoko covers. Not random enough. Like they made a mistake somehow in the fulfillment. So Vault is trying to make things right with retailers. So what they've announced is that every retailer who ordered that through either Lunar or Universal, they will get an equal number of a new Big Rig #1 bonus box, no additional cost. So basically, they're making brand new covers, another set of variants, shipping them out saying, no cost, here's what we're doing to make it right, which I think is the right thing to do. I think it's the right thing to do. The new bundle box will include any of 5 variants ranging from common to rare. And I'm sure that after they made a mistake, they have done some sort of quality control check to get it right this time. And to be clear, issue number 2 is also going to have the bundle box option. Listen to the artists that they'll have. Nathan Gooden, that makes sense. He's the interior artist. Jim Mahfood, I've heard of him. He's okay. Dan Panosian, we love him. Luana Vecchio, and Peach Momoko. So, very cool. Vault is right down the street from me. You should sneak in and get some bundle boxes. Yeah, you know, you can't like recall this stuff or anything. They're taking a financial hit to print new ones. Oh, Post Malone is a musician. He's a singer / rapper. I like some of his songs. I do. He does sort of, I don't know if there's a term for it, but it's kind of like sad rap, if that makes sense. He's a white guy with tattoos all over his face. He's got a unique look. I'd be lying if I said I didn't like some of his songs, though. And, you know, I mostly got this because I was like, okay, you know, the people involved, I like Nathan Gooden's art, and I like Daniel Warren Johnson, and he did the cover. I'll give it a shot. It's not a bad book. It's not a bad book. Unhappy Rappy. That's what it should be called. Yo, I got some unhappy Rappy, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make you cry a tear or two. Sad rap. Emo rap. That's right. He also voiced Ray Fillet in, what was it? Mutant Nation? Ninja Turtles Mutant Nation? Which is a very good movie, if you haven't seen it. He did the song Sunflower, Into the Spider-Verse. Yep. His love for Nirvana is my favorite thing about him. I honestly didn't know that, but I respect that too. He on paper, I look at Post Malone and I'd be like, I shouldn't like that guy. You know, he's ridiculously popular. I don't love face tattoos. I like tattoos, but I don't love face tattoos. I kind of like his music. So what can I say? I like Post Malone. Posty, and yeah. Mutant Mayhem. Not Mutant Nation. It was Mutant Mayhem. You know what I just confused? There is an IDW Ninja Turtles book currently out called Mutant Nation. So that's what I did. I conflated 2 Ninja Turtles things. What else have we got? Last piece of news. Nathan Fillion did in fact launch a comic. I speculated on it last week. Just real quick. Just going to say he's co-created a 4-issue comic with Heath Corson. I assume Heath Corson is doing the majority of the heavy lifting of the writing, but I don't know that for a fact. It's called Witness Point. Entertainment Weekly had like this image and got like sort of a press release of what the premise is. It's an interesting premise. Story takes place in a nice little town where all the residents get surprised when they realize they have been a dumping ground for the witness protection program for 40 years. Like if you get put into the witness protection program and given a new identity, they were secretly all going, just about all, going to this one town. They're all like former sort of criminals that testified and got into the witness protection program. All those people in one place. But they didn't know it until now. Why would you? They were keeping up their cover identity. Here's part of the not pitch, but like the press release on the premise. Suddenly, nobody trusts their neighbor anymore. Plus, there's a dead body of the guy who claimed to be a U.S. Marshal to worry about. Now it's up to the town's sheriff, who's harboring a massive secret of his own, a female marshal, and a crew of town weirdos to expose what's really going on. Doesn't sound bad. Obviously, also sounds like it's the sort of let's prove that this IP works, and then we're going to make a TV show or a movie out of it. I mean, it just does, but that's what it is. It doesn't sound bad, though. It doesn't sound bad. Good luck to Dark Horse, Heath Corson, and I'm sure Nathan Fillion needs a lot of help to become rich and famous. Let me add my camera and we will get into some reviews and art for this week. Let me just set it up. For anyone asking like how my arm is doing, a lot of days the answer is okay. Right now the answer is not so good, Al. It hurts, but what can you do? Dealing with something called adhesive capsulitis or frozen shoulder. All right, adding a camera. Add that to the stage. Feels like that's not quite in focus, right? Or is it? No, I have the hardest time coming up with the exact focus for this. All right, that's pretty good. So I won't go into too deep detail because this is a week old, but last week I got this Monday night right after my show ended, and I just thought I'd show you at least what the chrome cover by Daniel Warren Johnson looks like. What is Big Rig? If you don't know, the premise is it's set in medieval England, well, the Dark Ages specifically, and its people are being chased by possessed villagers and stuff. They get possessed by devils from hell, and one guy comes to their aid. He was a former, not cleric, what would you call it? Like a member of a secret order. He's like a cleric though, actually. That's not too bad. And they called for an angel to rescue them, and instead this gigantic 18-wheeler from our modern day shows up. And for some reason, when he gets in the truck and puts on the trucker hat, he now knows how to drive it. And so they use that to fight back against the enemy. Shades of something like Army of Darkness to a degree. It starts to become a little different when I keep saying he's just known as Trucker. He makes these allies in hell. He finds a Native American tracker and a Viking witch, and they sort of become his allies. They just give, they know how to track down devils and stuff, and he has this big weapon. And then there's stuff that's even in the back of the truck, chainsaws and other sort of weapons. It's fun. It's a blast. I can see how like the premise is sort of like a movie. I don't know how many issues you could continue to do without changing the premise up. It feels like this would have a finite end when they defeat the devils from hell, but you never know. It's fun. Yeah. Army of Darkness with a truck instead of his sedan. Yeah. A little bit. He's not really a spirit of vengeance. He's still just sort of a guy. It was in the truck. It's not all explained in issue 1, but it kind of works. It kind of works because you do also get to just meet some regular villagers, and people have different personalities. So there's some innocent people that we care about that we want to see rescued. As far as things, last week I talked about Blood and Thunder. Continues to be an absolutely fantastic action sci-fi satire set in the future where there's aliens and bounty hunters. Bloodso is not human, but she was adopted and raised as an orphan by humans. And now she has this artificial intelligence gun that her father used to use when he was on the police force. And now she works as a mercenary. It's very good. The art by E.J. Sue is fantastic. Really, really cool. And the other thing that I picked up that was from last week was the latest issue of Wonder Woman. Somehow I just forgot to pick it up last week. I picked it up this week. And this is a very fast read because all the dialogue by the people... I keep saying I'm distracted. All right. Let me reset. There's a bunch of people that left America. They live on an island run by a supervillain called Mouseman. And they all live in this weird fascist society. And the only things they say are, Mouseman knows, mice have ears, Mouseman knows. And that's all they really say. But Wonder Woman finds out about this place and is determined to go and rescue some people from it. The reason there's any conflict is because it is apparently recognized as its own nation, and people did go there voluntarily, even though it's a terrible place. And so the Justice League is like, yeah, we've got a charter that we've agreed to with the UN. We can't go there. But Wonder Woman's like, okay, yeah. And so she supposedly goes there just to save her friend, but of course she's going to upset everything. It's good. It's a weird fascist society. It's a fast read, though, because everybody in that society only talks by saying things like Mouseman knows and mice have ears. Yeah, it's fiction. This could never happen. Tin Can Society. No, I haven't tried that one. What was cool this week? What is worth talking about? Feral, Godzilla, Void Rivals, Exquisite Corpses, Absolute Wonder Woman, and this one I just got for the cover. So let me just talk about that real quick. My pal Jim Mahfood did a variant cover for Iron Man. It happened to be at my store for cover price, so I was like, yeah, I'll definitely get that. I flipped through. I didn't really care too much about the comic. I couldn't really get into it. Apparently, like, Iron Man's most advanced armors aren't working properly, so he's sort of working with outdated technology, which is a good idea, but I just didn't care too much about the story. But I will say that, boy, does this cover just exude energy, which is appropriate because apparently, to some degree, the armor Iron Man wears in it is powered by magic. It's different. I love it. I really do. The colors are by Mike Spicer, and I think that's worth pointing out because look at how, we've sort of got the orange-blue color scheme with Iron Man and the negative space breaking that up. He's mostly blacks, grays, and reds, but I think it separates that, and that like the yellows, oranges, and the blues, greens are pretty good natural contrasts. So it really does that's good coloring. It's a really good pose, super exaggerated, but boy, does it just really has energy to it. As far as like something that I'll give some deeper reviews, I got the latest crowd-funded campaign of Ed Piskor's final comic, and I was a little surprised by my reaction to it. I was also surprised by my reaction to this Godzilla comic. I'll just do this. Void Rivals, interesting as long as you're already enjoying it. Not necessarily the best issue to jump in on. Most notable thing for me is that some of the stuff that's most interesting is about this alien called Skuxoid, who was a bounty hunter in one or two episodes of the Transformers cartoon. But I think that the character really must interest Robert Kirkman because he's doing quite a bit with him, and the first 2 pages are about him as compared to the original characters. But very good if you're already enjoying it. I don't know if this is the best jumping on point, so I won't talk a whole lot about that. Exquisite Corpses is overseen by James Tynion, and he contributes... Oh, hold on. I didn't realize that, Jim, you were here. Let me jump back to your cover real quick just to see what you have to say there. Mike Spicer really crushed it on those colors. So since you're here, Jim, I know there's a delay, but I would love to hear, when you drew this, did you and Mike talk at all about what the color scheme would be for sort of, the energy coming out of Iron Man and this fluid organic background that he's walking through? Or is that all Mike? I'm very curious. Because I mean, I saw you post to social the black and white art, and it is obviously very dynamic. I think that this is a great case of a place where color really is doing some of the storytelling, though, by having these opposites and like highlighting that character there so well. It's not over rendered so that like this disappears. I'm just curious if you talked at all about that, or if that was all Mike's decision. If you're even willing to share, I should have asked. Great work, Jim. Skuxoid is pretty deep on Rugrats. It's surprising. Iron Man needs a suit powered by Jim's groovy voodoo. It basically is this issue. If Jim is even nearby, I got to give him time for like the delay plus time to type and then say that. But I'll put this just to the side in case he does respond to that. And I'll just talk a little bit about Exquisite Corpses. I won't go into super deep detail here because each issue of this is also co-written by a rotating cast of writers. Okay, hold on. Here's Jim telling us some. Jim's art is so unique, and he's built it more and more unique. I told him that Iron Man should be on fire, and he's walking through a psychedelic hellscape. In other words, like, so Mike Spicer could have decided to make the hellscape also sort of like warm colors, reds and yellows and oranges, and had like, you know, a very unifying hell theme, right? As though we're down in Mephisto's realm or something like that. And he did his magic on it and completely crushed it. Mike Spicer has become a colorist that I really, really like his color theory on. And I think he does a good job at doing a bit of rendering, but not covering up the line art, which can be very tricky. Thanks for sharing. I told him Iron Man should be on fire, and he's walking through a psychedelic hellscape. Yeah, I think he sincerely added to your piece in a beautiful way, Jim. Jim, let me ask you this as well. You don't have to answer because, you know, I know you weren't planning on getting like, you know, quizzed on your own art, but you do a lot of this. I'll say it's in black and white, although you use some mixed media. You know, I've seen you throw in Zipatone. I've seen you throw in, you know, whiteouts and stuff like that, and spatter of either ink or whiteout. You know, you'll get into that. Do you ever, for fun, go to your pieces and bust out, say, Copics or pencils and color it yourself? Or do you just not even have the time for that? Just curious. All right. Look, Exquisite Corpses is a bunch of hired mercenaries let loose in a town that's cut off, and they're all going after each other. That's all you really need to know, okay? And in this one, the big killer that we focus on the most is a nurse that like pretends to be normal, but he's got all sorts of poisons and stuff. He's going to go around and kill as many people as he can. And he gets into a hospital and he's about to kill some babies. That's pretty scary. Just like as an idea, you're like, how far will this go? Because lots of innocent people do get killed in this. This one's co-written by Pornsak Pichochet, and I'm probably mispronouncing his name. I loved his noir crime comic, The Good Asian. Great, great comic. What do I have to say about this? You know, it's only issue 3, so it's still sort of level setting. It's introducing a bunch of supporting cast, and therefore I really do want to see some of these killers go up against each other, but we're not really getting that quite yet because it's still building that out. So these are like the brackets that they've got for like the killers. There's going to be like 12, and so far we haven't really seen them go up against each other. They've sort of gotten taken out by other people for the most part. It's good though. It's good. It's a crazy concept. I love that it lends itself with its tournament style premise to allowing a new writer to come in, focus a little bit on that killer, focus on certain side characters that they feel like talking about. And there's a lot of them. And then of course it is still being overseen by James Tynion so that he can make sure that it's cohesive. And thus far, it has felt cohesive. The issue was a little disturbing, but interesting. I'm really enjoying it. I am. I probably enjoyed issue 1 and 2 a little bit more than issue 3 if I'm comparing all of those. But it's what it is. I don't have time to do that much these days. I'd ask Jim about coloring. I'm really trying to concentrate on the pencil and inking, and I'm having a blast collaborating with a colorist, mostly Spicer. Totally get that, Jim. Just curious if you ever did something like that as like a cool down activity or anything, basically. By the way, keep in mind, Jim does have a Kickstarter coming up for his next creator-owned comic, which is called Arachnid Enforcer, basically a satire of some of the superhero ideas you come across with Spider-Man, as well as other superhero tropes. And he's got a launch page that you can sign up to get notified when that goes live. But that is something that's going to happen before the end of the year. Jim adds, it's thrilling when he emails me the finished colors. I think he's really helping me up my game. He's got great color theory. That's all I just wanted to point out. Do I want to say anything about Absolute Wonder Woman? It's fantastic. But I feel like I've talked a lot lately about Hayden Sherman's art. I've talked a lot about what I like about this character's empathy, as well as her interesting background where she was raised in hell by Circe, a witch that wasn't traditionally good, but Wonder Woman is made good. But anything further I do here would more be breaking down the actual plot, and that's nothing but spoilering. I just want to say this goes to the top of my list anytime it comes out, because I know I'm going to be surprised. I know I'm going to enjoy it. There's going to be something with character work and something surprising with the plot every time. So I don't have a lot to say other than I strongly recommend Absolute Wonder Woman. This was the one that I put on the top of my pile this week, and I was not at all disappointed. Very, very, very much like, dude, I'll do anything I can. I want you to be successful, and I'm still thinking about what to do for my Kickstarter project, and I know that I'm going to want to have some help when I launch it with other people mentioning it and plugging it. This does involve Wonder Woman getting drugged, so that's the joke there. I love Godzilla. I think Godzilla is super cool. By the way, Shin Godzilla is, in my opinion, one of the 3 best Godzilla movies, and it is getting a re-release to theaters next month, August. That's cool. But IDW has the license to Godzilla, has done all sorts of different one-shots and limited series. Depends on how much you like the creator most of the time, how much you're going to like that Godzilla series. But they do all sorts of wild stuff, you know. Godzilla versus the Spanish Armada, Frank Thierry has you covered. Godzilla in a literary setting, turn of the century, Tom Scioli comes in. Just classic Godzilla versus Kaiju, but focusing on the effects of the devastation and the troops. James Stokoe has a great story. You know, like lots of different types of stories and crossover type stories. But now IDW is launching 3 ongoing monthly series set in a shared universe, and they're calling it the Kaisei era. And Kaisei is basically their catch-all term for the energy that powers Godzilla and other kaiju. Fair enough. First issue, Tim Seeley writing. I really would love to pronounce the artist's name correctly, but I doubt I can. Nicola Cismesia? Messia? Simeya? I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm trying too many. I like the art. I usually like a lot of what Tim Seeley writes. I thought that his Local Man was spectacular. And I like Godzilla, so I gave this a shot. And I'll be honest, it brings me no pleasure, but I didn't really love this. I don't think I'm going to continue. And that's just me being really picky about how many books I can read at once. The general premise here is kaiju exist. Godzilla's been around ever since his original movie, 1954. G-Force is the organization that goes up against him, and America has this group with a doctor who was transferred from Japan, Nuki, who is a person with superpowers from something called the Dead Zone, again, another superpowered individual called Incense, and Jet Jaguar, the robot who can change in size. And in this, just doesn't talk, just communicates with singing. There's the battle-hardened commander who's a jerk, and there's a brand new kid that can control Kaisei energy. Effectively, what I started to realize as I continued in this was a not as interesting take on the manga Kaiju number, is it called Kaiju number 8 or Kaiju number 9? I think it's called Kaiju number 8. I'm sorry. Greg, you're probably upset that I'm not giving this a glowing recommendation. I'm just trying to be honest. I'm open to it. I see the potential. I loved seeing Anguirus, an actual other Toho monster. They refer to Rodan. I love the world building. I do. But if you haven't read it, it's not a 1-for-1 or anything like that. But Kaiju number 8 features a force, a government force, that has special abilities given to them to fight back against the kaiju. And that's what I was getting here. But I just wasn't as into it. I wanted to be. I wanted to be. There's nothing bad about it. If you haven't read that manga, you might enjoy this more because it would be new to you. So anyway, I think that I gave it a shot. It's just probably not for me. Maybe I'll come back to it if people tell me that the story picks up and it has a great arc. Maybe I'll pick it up in trade paperback. I respect that Kaiju number 8 went ahead and, sort of ended on its own terms. It was super, super popular, but it told the story it wanted and it was focused. And I really admire that. Anyway, I certainly don't have anything to say that's bad in terms of the artwork. I don't have anything bad to say in terms of the dialogue or the premise. I just feel that I've gotten this take on a government-run team with people with abilities that are tasked with holding back kaiju. I feel like I've gotten that before. So will I be reading stuff like Godzilla Ninja Turtles? Yeah. But this one, nah, probably not for me. Good for you. Look, all I can do is give my opinion, and you can agree with that, or you can say, Chris, I disagree, but thanks for giving me some points about what it's about. I'm trying not to spoil it completely either, just to be clear. Godzilla versus 12 Angry Men. I'll also just say that, oh my God, Stray Dogs was dark. That was a book by Tony Fleeks and Trish Forstner that followed dogs. This one follows mostly cats, feral. But feral is so much darker. So much darker. Our large cast of survivors has gotten into a pet store where they think that they will be safe from the rabid zombie-like animals and people outside, only to find out that the animals that live here have become a weird cult that reminds me of something along the lines of Animal Farm. Okay? They are total weirdos, and they're doing something horrific to survive. And overall, I'll just say that Feral is a horror version of Watership Down, and I'm here for it. This is an epic story along the lines of the Odyssey, but told in a horror setting. Yeah, I did see the Ninja Turtles Godzilla mashup action figures photos, and I'll tell you something. I'm mad because my boy Donnie wasn't represented. I saw Leonardo Godzilla. I saw Michelangelo, I don't know, say Rodan. I saw Raphael, who's left? The King Caesar. I'm just making these up. But no Donatello. They save him for wave 2. Bullshit. How dare you? How dare you? Godzilla Dead Zone looked dope. It's on my list. Fair. I don't think people do have it, actually. Well, no, they might. They haven't really focused too much on people in a while. So I don't know if the infection is spread to people or not, but it's bad. Like, because the town that this is happening in is completely desolate other than animals. There's no more people. So something bad's happening to them. But we're seeing it all from the point of view of the cats. And this is our cast. It's a pretty big cast at this point. But that reminds me of things like both the Odyssey and Watership Down. It's very good. Let me wrap up my thoughts on books that came out this week with Switchblade Shorties. This is Ed Piskor's final book, obviously. And he decided to do something very different. And I do respect that Ed tried with every book to do something different. In this, he decided he would do a comic strip, an ongoing comic strip, focused on precocious little girls. 5 girls who get into crazy adventures looking for like their missing classmate. They go up against aliens and werewolves and all sorts of people. Ed did the thing that like Chris Claremont does, where each person talks with a very distinct accent. There's somebody with a stutter, somebody with a lisp, somebody that just like, has that cutesy access. It's called Tetris. See, you just stack these boxes. And it's definitely set in that sort of early 90s era that like Ed was still pretty young in and influenced by. And at first I was like, I don't think that this one's going to be for me. I didn't really follow along a whole lot when he was doing this. So I was like, it just doesn't sound like it's for me. But now I've read it in full. 150 pages of an ongoing serialized story, and it won me over. I didn't expect to say that. I sincerely thought that I was going to talk about this and go, yeah, it's not my favorite, but here's what I did like by Ed. But you know what? This book won me over, folks. I slowly found the sense of humor funnier, and the characters pretty engaging and likable. Their mysteries are just totally weird. It's a little gross, a little violent. It's taken that idea of Charlie Brown had tiny little kids that were talking like adults, and that was where the humor came from. This takes it a notch further because we're into a different generation, and it adds the occasional bit of violence or, drug use by adults and stuff like that. But at their core, I felt like these kids were kind of doing the right thing. They're trying to find their missing classmate. Look, this ended because Ed's no longer with us without a definitive conclusion. However, he did complete this first whole volume, and it includes a little bit of a flash forward to indicate what happened with some of these characters, which gives us enough closure that it does work as a complete volume. It does. I was surprised by that. But folks, is it my favorite Ed Piskor thing? No. For that, it's still probably Hip Hop Family Tree, his magnum opus. I also really liked the stuff Ed did with Harvey Piskor for Our Movie Year. That's the first thing by Ed's that I ever read, and I'm a big Harvey Piskor fan, so I always liked that. Yeah, but those are like probably my 2 favorite things that Ed did, just to be clear. I like this more than I thought. And honestly, I'm going to see if my wife might read it, because I think she'd find these crazy, precocious girls pretty funny. I could be wrong, but I think she might like it. And I do think that Ed was challenging himself artistically when you look at it, there is a level of detail to this bonkers stuff and the backgrounds and stuff, even though it's all told in very regimented panels. But I think that was a challenge to himself on how to do a story and tell it effectively with less creative options for laying out panel structure and pages. You know, he was limiting himself intentionally on one level to focus on storytelling on another. But I admire it. I really do. I admire it more than I thought I would. That's all I'll say. So, like, I went in this week thinking this, because I'd read a little bits of it here and there, but I realized that that's not the way to take it. You need to read the whole thing. I'd gone in thinking that this might be one of my least favorite things and that Godzilla was going to be one of my most favorite things, and I sort of felt the opposite out of what came out this week. Now, as far as what was the best thing I read this week, it's actually pretty damn close between Switchblade Shorties and Feral. And I think I still will give it to Feral just because I really, really like it. It's just my style of story, something big and epic. But there are also some similarities. You know, that core cast, a horror take with cutesy drawings, more similarities than I expected. Do I recommend it? I sincerely do. I think that you will get a complete enough story with this. And, you know, Ed's output amounts to how many books? Let's see, we'll group all the Harvey Pekar stories, WYSIWYG, which was about like early hacking and phone phreaking and stuff, Hip Hop Family Tree, the X-Men, what's it called? Full Story or X-Men Complete Story. I can't quite remember. Red Room and Switchblade Shorties. Six stories. I'm looking forward to getting Switchblade Shorties in the mail. Should be here soon. Yeah, I thought that the folks at Zoop did a pretty good job of getting it to us in a timely manner. You know, I know that a lot of people would have liked to have gotten it before Comic-Con, gotten it signed by maybe Ed's family or something like that, or have them be able to sell it there. It's too bad. Ed going full Bigfoot cartooning was the key. Yeah, it wasn't what I was expecting. Not that it's blue ink. They just, because it was all black and white, different story arcs have different colored background pages, kind of like you'd see in any issue of Weekly Shonen Jump. It's just to add a little bit of variety. I do give it a strong recommendation. I think ultimately I'll say that my pick of the week, we'll just do this. My pick of the week, my book of the week for Weekly Shonen Jump. Let's try that again. My pick for Weekly Spinner Rack's book of the week is Feral issue 15. That said, a very close second is Switchblade Shorties. And another couple of strong things that I do recommend would definitely include Absolute Wonder Woman. Very good. Let me draw something with you folks, and we'll talk about everything else that's comic booky in the news or in our minds right now. I'm just arranging some of my work area here, which is total nonsense. All right. My pick for Shonen Jump is One Piece. All right, let me get my tools. What do we got here? Yeah, I'll use this. I don't know exactly how good I can get with my likenesses when I try to work really quickly like this, but who cares? This is mostly about me just working on different ink techniques and trying to improve some of my speed and consistency. And if it doesn't look perfect, so what? nobody gets hurt. So no spoilers from me or anybody out there, but I saw, what do you call it? Fantastic Four First Steps, and I really liked it. I was very nervous that I might not, or that it would be, to me, not what I want out of Fantastic Four. And it wasn't perfect. I'm not going to say that, but it's definitely at least a B plus. At least a B plus. I really thought that it was a cool take on Fantastic Four. I thought it included quite a bit of Jack Kirby in its DNA, and I liked it. Sometimes I wish that there was more of Ben Grimm the Thing, or I wish that there was more of Reed's superpowers, or even just action scenes in general. But with the story they're trying to tell, I think that they did have some more action scenes, and they actually cut some of it to streamline it and get this story focused. And overall, it's a really good story, and it worked for me. So I just want to say, does it get a recommendation from me? It really does. It really does. And I think that they could do a lot of interesting things with this cast in the future, whether that involves it being, part of a shared universe with all sorts of other superheroes, or doing its own thing. It's got options at this point. I'm sure a lot of you saw it. I hope you enjoyed it. Vanessa Kirby was great. I would say that Vanessa Kirby probably comes out of it with the most to do acting-wise, and it's a really good take on Sue Storm. I don't think any of them were bad. I think the look of the Thing was fantastic. No pun intended. And I liked I liked what they did with Johnny. Johnny, it shows that all of the Fantastic Four are smart in their own way. Like there's a puzzle to sort of be solved in the movie. I won't explain what it is because I don't want to get into spoilers. But there's a puzzle to be solved, and it's something that Johnny has sort of got a few of the pieces towards. And at one point, Sue is like, you might be onto something. Let's go to Reed. And he's like, Reed is working on something bigger and probably more important right now. I'm going to do this. And I liked that. I was like, yeah, you can't, but even though Sue Storm is tremendously important as the emotional core of the movie, and to some extent the decision maker of the family, every plan that they come up with is Reed's plan. Reed pitches a plan, makes sure that people are on board, and then he has backup plans and stuff, all sorts of plans. That all came from Reed. They do come up with Reed very clever. Reed is also enough of a man of action that he's going to fight an ape, or he's going to find a way to literally physically hurt Galactus in a fight, just him. And I'm like, cool. I want that out of Mr. Fantastic. I want him to be able to at least inflict pain, if not outright defeat Galactus. And so there's a lot to like. There's a lot to like. It's very much focused on family. It's very much focused on scientific exploration. Each of the characters gets good moment. I would say Thing probably has the least to do out of the three, but in a way that is okay, because he'd have a lot to do in any potential next thing. Grand design. Thank you, Iron Shell. So I liked it quite a bit. Was there anything else comic booky that came out recently? Can't think of anything. Oh, there was a little bit more sort of entertainment-based news that I sort of cut from the just news side of the show, but I'll mention here. One of the Netflix shows that I enjoyed that was based on a comic was called All of Us Are Dead. And it was, Netflix show, live action, based on a Korean manhwa, which is basically a zombie story set in high school. I really liked season 1. It's been a couple years, but Netflix did announce this week that production has begun on season 2, and it's bringing back the characters that I really liked from it. So I'm excited. Thank you, Contemporary Comics. Usagi Yojimbo, 10,000 Plums was my favorite book this week. I didn't see it. Otherwise, it could be up there. The miniseries wrapped up. Very touching and personal story for Stan Sakai. Stan always brings it. He has been for so long. Let's see. I suspect there was at least one thing Natasha Lyonne scene that they cut out. I also felt like that probably had a little bit more to it. By the way, Natasha Lyonne plays a character that's not from the comics, but I personally think was based heavily on Jack Kirby's wife, Roz. I just got that sense. This isn't a spoiler or anything, but the universe that this Fantastic Four takes place in has a meaning that's specific to Jack Kirby. The movie ends with a Jack Kirby quote. There's a lot of Kirby in its DNA. It's really nice. How many local comics do you visit or have? Do you mean stores? If so, 2. Apparently, Todd McFarlane has said that they are close to signing a director for the Spawn movie, but who knows if that is true. I hope he's right. It's just he's been saying that stuff for a long time, so I'm more of like, okay, when it gets announced in Hollywood Reporter or Variety, I'll believe it. For the Super Apes. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you. I don't know, but I do know that Kirby's granddaughter Jillian was at the premiere, and she was also with another granddaughter. I'm forgetting her name right now, but like at a naming of a street as Jack Kirby Way in New York. So I think that like the family is on board for whatever that means. Oh, also, like, you know who else was at the blue carpet? Because it wasn't a red carpet, it was a blue carpet. The cast from the unreleased 1994 live action movie all got invited. Well, they have a cameo in the movie without giving anything away, but they were also invited to be at the premiere, and all 4 of them like have some pictures together. And so I think Marvel did a couple things to take care of the Kirby family and pay some homage and respect to those that have come before. I loved the actual take on Ben Grimm. I liked his look. I liked his voice. I liked his attitude. This was a great take on Ben. I wanted more of him, but he was cool and he was powerful. He was good. Yeah, Ioan Griffith was there. That was nice. I didn't see that video, but I did hear that George Lucas made his first ever Comic-Con appearance and talked about his new Lucas Museum of Narrative Art. I'd love to visit that. Did not hear about that, but I'm involved with any crime. You say crime comic and David Lapham, I'm there. So I didn't know that Dan Houser from video games is doing that, but that sounds great. Mark Gatiss ends up in the strangest places as an actor every once in a while. Yeah. All right. I have neglected drawing a little too much. Another smaller piece of comic book news is that Crossed, started by Garth Ennis, but some other writers along the way. I think Alan Moore worked on it, and Warren Ellis too. Definitely Warren Ellis. Anyway, Crossed is getting a live action adaptation, and they announced a bunch of cast members for it. I just didn't include it because I didn't really recognize any of the names, so I didn't really have any big opinions. I don't think most of you would have any big opinions on it, but it's moving forward, and yeah, it's a pretty dark story, so it'll be interesting to see what that ends up evolving into. Oh, there was a trailer for season 2 of Peacemaker. And that looked pretty damn good. No surprise there. What's to be said? I think that at San Diego Comic-Con, they also had a small concert by the band that did the new theme song for season 2. Crossed isn't going to be a TV show. It's going to be an actual movie. So I forget who's doing that, but yeah. How long have you been doing the weekly spinner rack? How did you try to make it different than other existing YouTube comic book focused shows? I don't know how long I've been doing this. 2 years? Have I been doing it longer than that? I really don't remember when I decided to start doing it. Because I've been doing other stuff on YouTube for so long. I just sort of slowly started doing it. And as far as trying to make it different from any others, I've never had that as a goal. So I've never really looked at others and said, I want to do it like this, or I want to do it unlike that. I don't think I've been doing, I might have had this channel, but I don't think I've been doing this show for 6 to 7 years. Maybe 3. I don't think I've been doing it that long. Yeah, I just have been doing, this is a show that I do for myself in a lot of ways. Like, this is just, I enjoy talking about comics. By creating this show, it just meant that I could have an excuse to hang out with people like everybody here, as well as the people that leave comments once it's on demand, I'll call it. And yeah, it's just for fun. So it's never been like I've intentionally tried to craft this show for like any sort of algorithm type purposes. It's really just for me. I mean, I want it to be good and entertaining. Yeah, if that makes sense. I haven't tried to follow any sort of trends or do it differently. Have I read Sarah by Garth Ennis and Steve Epting? I haven't, but I'd totally be up for it. War comics are cool. I think Garth Ennis does do good war stories. I've definitely read some. I like Steve Epting a lot, so yeah. YouTube show's first weekly Spinner Rack episode is being 3 years ago. That sounds right. That sounds right. And even that sounds like longer than I thought, but that sounds right. First one was from 10/18/21. Maybe. I don't remember. And it evolved, in the first few episodes. It evolved. So it's hard to sort of really remember. I think at first it was just sort of meant that like I would draw and talk about comic stuff, and then I was like, or just draw, and then I was like, oh, I need to like do more planning to have stuff to talk about. So that took a minute to like figure out, and then I was like, well, as long as I'm sort of planning out what I'll talk about, maybe I'll follow the news even more closely and do a recap. Just because, why not? It's been a lot of fun for me. Good question. Sorry, I don't have probably a more satisfying answer. I'm currently working on the next comic tropes. I've been working very hard to create content a little like faster. Just put in a little bit more work. And the next one I'm going to do, I've already got the script ready. I just need to like record it, and then editing is going to be a bitch on this one. But it's going to be about manga. It's going to be about a more modern manga. I'll be a little more critical of something. So I'm looking forward to it. Comics are more fun to talk about than just current events. What was your first interview? Don't really remember. Probably would have been somebody that I'm just friendly with, though. For Weekly Spinner Rack, I bet, I don't know. It could have been somebody like Kyle Higgins or Jim Zub or maybe even Jim Mahfood. I just don't remember. But it was probably somebody that I was like, that I'm friendlier with. And I was just like, hey, why don't you come on? Because you've got something to promote. And, it'll just be a segment within the show. And now I get pitched stuff by publishers a bunch, but I'm like, I don't know much about that, or I don't have the time to prepare to do a good interview. So sometimes I say yes, sometimes I say no. It just sort of depends on how much time I have. I retroactively went ahead and took a Stan Lee interview that I did and put it on this channel, but that was originally only audio, so I just added some images of us. But yeah. Did you happen to see who appears in the latest Superman issue? No, I haven't read it. Sorry. I am reading Vinland Saga, and it's been quite a journey. Yeah, it's wild to think that it just finished. But I'm not up to that point. I've been reading it in the English translations. Geez, Rami, I'm sorry that you're dealing with anything. So many of us are, but I'm glad on any level that the show helped. That means a lot. It really does. Thanks, Wayne. I'm just trying to do something fun. Like, let us have a place to hang out and talk comics. Do some goofs and gaffs. A place where I can try to do impressions of every president of the United States. I did do that, right? I did do, like, not every president, but I did have an episode where I just started going into doing impressions of all what I thought each president that somebody suggested would sound like. I do have fun doing voices. I know I'm not a professional, but I really do have fun doing voices. So my apologies that you've had to deal with that over apparently 3 years. A journey from Milan to Minsk. That was Seinfeld, right? Joshua Williamson does impress me a lot. Was Taft the heaviest president, or was that Polk? I think it was Taft.
Hello there. It's me, President Taft. I do declare I need my bathwater filled again. It's time for me to hop in the bath, everybody, and make some presidential proclamations.
I do try to treat it as a variety show. It's a little old school there. I should reach back out to Bill Sienkiewicz. I do have his contact. There's a few people that I have contact information for, and I haven't really been focused on getting an interview, but I would love to talk to, and I have the contact info for Chip Zdarsky, Bill Sienkiewicz, Mark Wade. Those are all people I would like to talk to. I could be wrong. I'm not a very good historian, but it might have been William Henry Harrison that had the shortest presidency. I can't quite remember, but there was one that gave like an epic speech out in the cold and the rain. He got sick and he died within like a month or two. I think that was William Henry Harrison. I would love, if I'm right, please tell me, folks. Just Google it. But if I'm wrong, yeah. I knew that there would be a lot, so I didn't include all the Eisner stuff. I'll probably mention it tomorrow. I know it's a week later, but I can just sort of like riff on it next time. Tyler was the one that got sick and died within like that time. I don't know why I thought it was Harrison. Did you see a Marvel versus Capcom art book is coming out from Udon? Some of the art looks insane, especially X-Men. By the way, my latest episode talks about how Marvel president Isaac Perlmutter, former president to be fair, but Perlmutter had blocked and canceled what do you call it? He'd canceled Fantastic Four basically out of spite, but he also did block a bunch of X-Men stuff. They couldn't stop publishing the comic because it was too profitable, but they did do a lot of weird stuff with it. They stopped merchandising. And some of that included taking the X-Men out of the Marvel Capcom games. They removed digitally X-Men characters from their Secret Wars covers that was on merchandise. It was crazy. William Henry Harrison did die in 30 days, so I was right. Okay. That's good. Ah, yes, the Whig Party. Perlmutter did a lot to shoot Marvel in the foot, and it's really weird. It's really some strange business decisions. He was the one behind pushing Inhumans as hard as it got pushed. And here's the thing. The Inhumans are great. They're cool. They're not the X-Men. That shows how little he understood his own company and his own characters and the business, because the Inhumans, sure, on paper, they have similar sort of weird powers, right? They're outsiders and stuff like the X-Men, but it's not one-to-one. The X-Men could be anybody, right? They're just average people that have something different about them. Very relatable, very relatable. Any of us can feel like outsiders or a minority. The Inhumans are royalty and isolationists. There's plenty of juicy material there to work with, but they're not the X-Men. They're they're too far removed. You have to do different stuff to find them relatable in terms of, well, they're still family. They still have friends. They still have like day-to-day cares and activities. So there's ways to make us care about the Inhumans, but they're never going to be the X-Men. They're never going to be the X-Men. Exactly. He's just like, oh, they're both weirdo teams with powers. It's not. They're not. So if you ever wondered why like Marvel was pushing it so hardcore, that was primarily Perlmutter dictating that to the editorial team, saying like, push Inhumans, that's going to take off, and we won't have to use the X-Men, and therefore Fox won't, keep making money off of our characters. But that's not how it works. Nice try, Ike. Now, in retrospect, it's really easy to see that a lot of times when Marvel wasn't working too well, that it wasn't the artists, the writers, even the editors all the time. Sometimes it was really like the higher ups saying, push this, don't push that. And you're at cross purposes. You're like, okay, so my goal is to make the best X-Men comic possible, but then you're telling me don't introduce any new characters. You're tying my hands. It's so broken. Besides Jack Kirby, who would be your top 3 Fantastic Four artists? Okay, well, that's a fun question. I think that's a little easier than writers, because writers, I've got like 5, but like, who would my top 3 be? Like, that'll move around a little. Besides Jack Kirby, I get to come up with 3 more or 2 more? You're saying besides Jack Kirby, who would be your top 3? But that implies that Kirby is one of them, which he would be. I would say that for Fantastic Four specifically, not just my favorite artists or anything that happened to work on it, John Byrne and Walt Simonson. And they actually also were both the writers, but those would probably be my 2 favorite that had a run that worked on it. Not just like 1 or 2 issues, like a run. Oh, 3 more, says Francisco. Oh, any plans for another indie showcase live show? I keep wanting to. I'm just working so many hours that I just, like, even this is like at most 2 to 3 hours. And then I'm like right back. I could, if I do an indie showcase live, that's going to be 5 to 8 hours. I don't know when I can fit it in. I want to. Oh, I missed a super chat. Excuse me. Jumping back. No, I don't think I missed. I'm looking at all the super chats. I think I got them all. Yeah, because it was 8 hours. That means that if I do one again, it means I want to start it before 5 o'clock. I might start it as and I have to announce it ahead of time. It's very hard. It's very hard to fit in. I want to give back to the community. It's hard. It's very hard. I thought I got Rami's. Hold on. I'm going back again. Oh, I did miss it. Rami, my apologies. Thank you so much for the super chat. I wish you would do an interview with Don Rosa. That could be interesting. No question. I think, Don has an interesting life story, as well as all the stuff he's done for the Ducks. But he also has an interesting story with his collection, his history in the industry. I'll keep it in mind. What are you trying to kill me? A 24-hour marathon. I would be dead. I would be dead. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. I'll say this, if my channel was like really, really successful on the level of, 2 million subscribers or something, you would see some different stuff here. I would travel to both conventions and potentially any artists or writers and do an interview there so that we could see their work process. I would do it more like documentary style. I'd need to fly, and I'd need to hire somebody to sort of do the camera work. But I'm saying if I had 2 million subscribers, you'd see something like that on my channel instead of just, talking, which you get a lot of the same interview information, but I think that there's a visual component and an educational component. What else would I do differently? I would definitely create a grant, just like Peter Laird created the Zurich grant. I would create a grant. I would definitely create a grant if I had money. I don't have that kind of money, but that's something I'd want to do, is create a grant to allow upcoming indie creators an opportunity to fund their comic and get promotion and get visibility. I'm seeing my shirt. Thank you. It says, "I'm King Ghidorah." And I got this in Japan this past January. One of the few nice things that happened from that trip. It's obviously a devastating trip for me and my family, but I did get this very cool one-off shirt by a street artist in Japan that he was in a high-end clothing store, but he does street art. So there are a few things that I would do for the community, is all I'm saying, if I had the funding. But first you have to just create the most entertaining and educational show you can and hope that it continues to grow. And my show has always continued to grow, thank goodness. But will it ever be the kind of a show that has 1 million subscribers? That's a long shot. That is a long shot. Just talking sort of dreams. What would you guys do if you were rich? Are there medical procedures you need, or there like a house for a family member you'd pay off? Like, what would you do if you were wildly successful and all of a sudden had 1 million or millions? Would it be travel? Would it be like donating to a specific charity that you care about? What do you think you would do? Is there anything you would do within comics that just buy a certain comic or fund a certain thing? Oh, that's really beautiful to hear. I love it when I hear that somebody has tried a comic on my recommendation and when they love it. That means a lot to me. I want comics to continue to be seen by more and more people. I'm not sure I'm super familiar with Emma Rios, but I'll look into that, Sir Catron. Thank you. I appreciate it. I do put a lot of effort into trying to prepare properly for an interview. And I'm not saying that I always get it right. I'm not. But I try to familiarize myself with as much of the history of the person as I can and look at other interviews to see what has been asked so that hopefully, even if there's the same thing I want to talk about, I can talk about it frame it in a different way. I want it to be interesting for the person I'm doing it with and not just work. But thanks for saying that. It means a lot to me. Y'all are so nice. I'm convinced that people that like stories are set up to be empathic on a certain level. Everybody's different, but I think that there's when you're focused on storytelling and stories, you think about the human condition a lot. And I think it sets people up to potentially be empathic and empathetic to their fellow man. I hope so, anyway. All right, so here's what some people would do with the money. I would subscribe to your channels. Well, you could do that for free, but thank you. All right, I'm going to jump back. Let's see. I'd open a comic artist community. One day you might find yourself part of a community. Maybe. Who knows? Would invest in comics, donate for cancer research. Beautiful. Pay off the mortgage and get the house fixed. Yeah, these are things I'd love to do too. A grant would be a really cool idea. I'd be donating a lot of it and backing Kickstarters. Yeah, that'd be fun. That'd be very fun. Depends on how much money, sure. Hiring an artist to make a comic. Buy a comic artist backlog so they have a year or two to work on something entirely their own. Ooh, brave. I would take a few years off to work on my own comics and pay my best friend to work on them, then promote the hell out of them. That would be beautiful. Pay my sister's medical bills. Small homes in my favorite cities. Big donation to Scottish Rite. They did my back surgery in 2002. St. Jude and the national parks. The rest would be player donating. Well, those are beautiful. Those are really, really nice. I'd buy Ultraverse from Marvel and reboot it from the ground up. That's cool. If I had money, I'd get the ball rolling to provide health insurance and retirement programs aimed for comic book industry workers to be affordable and reliable. Beautiful sentiment, Devastator Omega, and I'm sure that there could be a market for that if someone knew enough about it. They could come up with a good group plan that people could buy into. try to reopen our local drive-in. That's awesome. A nice tall glass of maple syrup up in Canada. Pay all my friends' mortgages. You guys are so nice. All right, let me wrap this up. There's not a whole lot that I need to do here. And then I'll explain my gag to this, and you can judge how groan-worthy it all is. All right, let's see here. I need to do a little lettering, and then I'll pop my head up, see what kind of things are being discussed. I wish I could letter by hand professionally and consistently, but I just don't really have good penmanship. Even if I can draw okay, I'd never really claim to have good penmanship for lettering. But I do enjoy lettering digitally on a certain level. I admire good lettering. And I find bad lettering quite distracting. I see that chats are still coming in, folks. I'll take a look at them in just a sec. I'm just really close to being able to wrap up this week's comic strip. And then next week, if I draw, I'll probably be more inclined to draw either like a traditional comic book page or at least a pinup or something like that. But this is a nice cool down for me, getting to just sort of mess around with inks and such. All right, so this is Fast, probably the last one, because I think this is more Fast and Furious stuff than anyone needs. But here we go. So here's the gag. All right, let's go. Fast Tracks 5. Wait, Dom, you're saying Jacob is your biological brother?
Of course. You see anyone else that looks like me, Han?
And we've got a terrible likeness of Roman, Hobbs, and Shaw. I'll even label them. Roman, Hobbs, Shaw. Because the Fast and Furious series has a tremendous amount of bald heroes on the team. All right. Yes, a comic book cooldown. Good. I'm glad you all entertained yourselves. Oh man, you got to dig on us bald. I'm not making fun at all. I'm just saying there are a lot of bald heroes, and also it's very weird that the series says to us that Vin Diesel and John Cena are supposed to be biological brothers, because I'm sorry, I don't see it. But what do I know? I don't know what the Toretto family is supposed to be. I really don't. The one that's supposed to be related to him looks the least like Dom. Just my take. Loved to talk to Sal, but he's up there in years. I'm really not sure if he's still doing any interviews or anything at this point. Yeah, there's unfortunately not a whole lot of people left alive that were working in the Golden Age, and I think Sal did technically do some work before what we define as the Silver Age. So I think we'd count him in that very select group that's still remaining. I mean, we're already losing people from the Silver Age, but it's really sad to me that that I've grown up in an era where people from the Golden Age were still alive and going to comic conventions, but I was young enough that I didn't always know who they were and missed out on opportunities to see certain people. Certainly would have been my privilege to be able to say, oh, I did meet Jack Kirby once or something. Didn't happen. Would have been cool. Oh, thanks for watching that one. Yeah. Just every once in a while need to do one that's a little more of a story time type episode than anything else. What inspired the comic strip in the previous one of Fast and Furious, though they're not comic stripping much in this episode? They're not? I don't know. Just that I do like the movies, but they're ridiculous. So I like how ridiculous what do you call it? Chick tracts are, where they're like trying to educate you or something. So the first one was way more chick tracty, with Dom saying live thy life a quarter mile at a time. And then I sort of got further and further away from what makes things like a chick tract. The second one was Dom's son crying because his uncle Jacob died, and Vin Diesel saying, patience, family always returns. And we've got like 3 characters that were killed off in the movies that all came back. They brought back at least 3 characters that were dead. The third one talks about how they need to recruit a team with people that have all these different skill sets. And then Dom points out that, yeah, that's fair, but they mostly all drive cars. There was at least one movie, I want to say 6, where they acted like they all had different skill sets. I was like, these people are all just car drivers, not like hackers and stuff. There's one where somebody was appraising Dom's car and pointed out that it's not worth much because it's got a lot of frame damage. And Dom's like, yeah, I've rebuilt it 5 times. It's been destroyed at least 5 times. And then, of course, the latest one, where we're supposed to believe that John Cena and Vin Diesel are biological brothers and ignore the fact that there are 4 more bald team members. So anyway, that's all. The stories Kirby we missed out on and would tell us if alive, like Steranko slapping Bob Kane. Except Kirby was just a much kinder guy. He did not talk shit about the people that he worked with generally. He just didn't. He came up in an era where, he came up through the Great Depression, and he saw people struggling to eat, and he didn't ever want to sort of take food out of somebody else's mouth. He didn't want to ruin somebody's career, even if he didn't really like their work or who they were. He kind of kept that to himself a lot of times. Fast Track should be my day job. It's a little rushed to make it a day job, but thank you. The Fast and Furious franchise is ridiculous, but so damn fun. I agree. That's the only reason I did it. And that's why I think 5 is enough. If I do any more comic strips, they'll be more comic book based. I just needed to get this out of my system. Busick questions Steranko's story of slapping Kane. I do too. Because we're not getting stories of like somebody else going like, did you hear that Steranko just slapped Bob Kane across the face? That would get discussed at that Comic-Con and be known. So I take a lot of what Steranko says with a big grain of salt, a whole salt shaker of salt. But I'm also impressed with how influential Steranko was, considering the number of comics he made, which is actually quite low, the actual number of comics he made, but very influential, very influential. I don't believe that Fast and Furious has ever crossed over with Transformers, and I guess I could see them doing that, like actually as a toy line, though. I could see them trying that, making like a Dodge Charger that was a Transformer. Dan Clowes is in Eddington? No, I didn't know that. Is that right? I would never have guessed anything like that. Wow. I want to see Eddington. I haven't had, I made time to see Superman and Fantastic Four because it's comic related and I didn't want to get spoiled and I wanted to be able to talk about it if I needed to. I do love going to the movies, but I've been so busy lately that I haven't been able to see a bunch of things that I'm interested, including Eddington. This week, I'd love to see Together. That looks like an interesting horror movie. I'd like to see The Naked Gun. Will I get to? Question mark. Because I am about to really put my head down to create this episode, which is going to require a lot of editing. Anytime you discuss manga, it's tricky. I've got the manga that I'm going to talk about. I've got the comics that I'm going to talk about, but the time it takes to scan those is interminable. And it's tricky because they're smaller and there's like that bend. Very tricky to scan. So then you go, okay, well, what digital versions exist? Well, unfortunately, a lot of the digital versions that are out there are going to be fan scans and fan translations. I don't want to put up a fan translation when I'm talking about it, so I make the choice to take those images but remove the fan translation text. It's weird, I know, but it's like the only way I can think of to get all the imagery that I need. With one or two exceptions, to be honest. Like sometimes I've been able to buy a digital version of certain mangas and I can use those sometimes, but that's not all the time. Ugh. Huh, that's amazing. That's really cool. Anyway, I do recommend going out and seeing Fantastic Four. It's quite good. Oh, you know what? Did I mention this to you? This is also based on a comic or based on a Korean webtoon. Mercy for None. It was turned into a short live-action Netflix series a month or two ago. It's pretty badass, folks. It's pretty badass. Mercy for None on Netflix. Very cool. Very cool. I don't think he completely sucks. I think he showed more depth and range in Peacemaker than I expected. I knew he could do comedy. I hadn't really seen him attempt too much with like a nuanced character that like felt pain or, got angry or got hurt. I liked him in Peacemaker, and I've found him funny in several things. Do I think he's the best actor out of wrestlers? No, but he's pretty darn good as far as pro wrestlers go. I think my personal favorite for wrestler turned actor would be Batista. I think he's done a few very good performances. And then I think that Roddy Piper had a few good roles. The Rock has had a few, but hasn't really tried super hard in a long time. But sometimes he's good. Sometimes. Yeah, I know what you mean. At the same time, I really shouldn't be promoting that. I feel bad enough, but it's like the only way I can sometimes get all the images. No Holds Barred sequel. Oh boy. Oh yeah, I forget that too. But Bumblebee was a decent movie. How can he be an actor if you can't see him? I don't know. Yeah, Hogan was not all that good as an actor at all. He never tried to be, though, to be fair. He just tried to be his persona. I'm not a huge fan of Hogan. Sorry. Let's see. Is it true James Gunn mentioned The Rock trying to force his way into DC films? I don't think James Gunn said anything about that one way or the other. Now, behind the scenes, we do know now that, like, The Rock went straight to the president of WB to really change what the movies were trying to do with characters like Black Adam. You know, he started out, he was going to be Black Adam in Shazam. And then he was like, no, I want to get my own movie. And that took ages to finally make. And then he really, really lobbied that he wouldn't go up against, you know, canonically his comic book enemy Shazam. No, he needed to go up against Superman and build to that. And he went above like the producer and director's heads that worked on Black Adam and made that happen. It's kind of shitty, to be honest, because I think it was a piece of what fractured the DCEU. The other thing being they had like 6 movies in a row that lost money. So didn't work. I know. And that's, you know, that's why I don't completely count The Rock out. Every once in a while he does try. And I think he actually does have acting chops when he tries. Some of his earliest movies, he tried harder. This one is done by one of the Safdie brothers who have made some great films, some really good dramas. Yeah, that could be good. That could be like a good drama. Dude, Macho Man was just fun. I miss Randy Savage. Randy Savage was fun. In an interview with Josh Horowitz, James Gunn didn't mention him by name, but did allude to it. Oh, okay. I haven't come across that, so I can't speak to it. The Rock was in Pain and Gain, and I think that that's another one where he's pretty darn good. That also starred my friend Ken Jeong. Ken had a pretty good role in that one. The Rock, outside of just like his action movies, because there are some good action movies that he's been in. I think we can all agree that we'll have our different favorites, but he does some good ones and some that are kind of middling. But early on, what was the one I'm thinking of? It's like that sequel to Get Shorty, wasn't it? Like he played like a gay bouncer that wanted to like write screenplays. I want to say I can't remember the name of that movie, but he was pretty good in that, playing against type. So. Pain and Gain is a good movie based on a true story. It's interesting. Be Cool. Is that the movie that I'm thinking of where The Rock sort of played against type, and that was a fairly early one for him? And I was like, okay, he does have range if he tries. He was in Southland Tales, and that was another pretty weird role. I like, but don't love Southland Tales. It is definitely a muddled experience. I wanted it to be good because I really enjoyed the director's movie Donnie Darko. And I was like, yeah, can this guy do other cool stuff? Well, Southland Tales was interesting, but it didn't quite work. Anyway, I think that should probably do it for this week. So, if you have time, there is a newer episode over on Comic Tropes. What did I do again? Oh, yeah, talking about the history behind the scenes of why Marvel Comics canceled Fantastic Four rather than like do a reboot or a reset or anything like that. Why they canceled it for several years. Just an interesting behind the scenes story. Let's see. I'll be coming up with a poll for my Patreon members to vote for their exclusive episode in August soon. I've got some ideas to that effect. I might offer them me reviewing comic books starring food mascots. Like I really mean restaurant mascots, because there's a lot actually. And then the next episode I'm doing is about a manga. I still would love to do one about Ramona Fradon soon. I definitely want to do one about Trad Moore. I think he's got an interesting art style that could be interesting to discuss and analyze. So yeah, those are some of the things that are on my plate currently for Comic Tropes. And then on this channel, of course, just doing the weekly news and reviews. But Jim and I are going to be meeting pretty soon to look at the first Friday the 13th movie. And I know a lot of people have reviewed it, but it's something that we both like, and we're going to figure out why we like it and talk about all that weird stuff. That should be fun. Let's see. The Ball and Dread comics that couldn't be reprinted. I've never heard about that there were some that couldn't be reprinted. I got to look that up. I don't think I knew that. Combo Man's return. Yes. Anyway, thank you everybody very, very much for being here. It means a lot to me. And I think that should do it. Yeah. So I'm going to take off. Your marching orders are keep reading comics. Double salute. Thank you for being a great audience. Let me know in the comments what your pick for the best comic of the week was. Thanks, everybody. Bye.